Welcome. Today, I'm sorry for the little late start here today, but I'm here. Today is Tuesday, June the 15th. This is a work session of the Board of County Commissioners. It is 1 o'clock, and the first item on our agenda is the Aspen Fire Department Wildfire Monitoring System. And I believe, Jeff, you are in charge here. So I'm going to give you the floor and let you take it away.
I am, Patty. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes, sir, we can. Fancy.
Well, great.
I'm just
well,
okay.
Yeah, let's get started. We have 45 minutes. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the Board of County Commissioners for the opportunity to present here today. My name is Jeff Kruger. I'm the Telecommunications Manager for Pickens County. And today we're going to be discussing an innovative approach to wildfire detection and alerting. The system was developed by the Pano Company, and it uses a combination of high-performance cameras and advanced artificial intelligence algorithms to detect smoke in the camera field of view. Just to be clear, this is a pilot project. It will be running from July to November of this year. It is therefore a temporary prototype that will evaluate the system and provide a proof of concept and potentially lead to a long-term solution. This photo in front of you, our first slide, is a picture of the Grizzly Creek fire last year. This was taken from our Sunlight Tower in August. The fire started on August 10th. We were up there installing microwave equipment about 4 or 5 days later, and you can just see how this fire exploded. You can also see the potential benefit of an early detection fire system could have when integrated with our county infrastructure on our region. You have outstanding views, 360 views from our mountaintop infrastructure. We go on. So here's our agenda today. I'll do some brief introduction. We'll talk about goals and objectives. We'll do a deep dive into the Pano AI wildfire detection system. And then we'll go over the impacts, both in terms of county infrastructure as well as budget impacts. We'll talk about a proposed timeline and answer any questions that you have. And also feel free to interrupt at any time if you have any questions. So here's a list of our guest speakers today. From Aspen Fire, we have Chief Rick Valentine and Deputy Chief Jake Anderson. From the Pano AI Company, we have Arvind Satyam and Rafi Singh. And then, of course, myself. So I'm going to go ahead and let Chief Rick take it away from here.
Okay.
We'll move on to project goals and objectives.
All right, and just before Rick, just before you get started, I failed to acknowledge in the room with us now we have Francie Jacober, County Commissioner, Greg Poshman, Steve Child is zooming in from home, Kelly McNicholas is out of town. We also have Sheriff Joey DeSalvo in the room with us here. So just to let everybody know the audience and where the Board of Commissioners are. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you.
Joe, you could sit here, then you'd be on TV.
Rick, you're muted.
Sit closer.
Or you can sit right over here.
Nick, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Patty. And I also want to echo what Jeff said. Thanks for having us today, and thanks for taking time to look at this presentation. First of all, I was asked to put down some project goals and objectives that we had when we started talking to Pano AI about this project. And they're on the screen now. Provide early wildfire detection and confirmation for our community and our neighbors at very low cost. It was pointed out to me this is not at zero cost because there's still some cost involved from our staffing side to help monitor this program with Pano. So it's not a zero cost, it's very low cost to the community. Again, just staff time from our side is all it's going to cost at this point with the donation we have. So, and I think number two, a good example, number one is confirmation of our community and our neighbors at a very low cost. One thing I want to say is, this project could offer redundancy if there's something going on out there, and for some reason someone can't call in 911 or get a hold of anybody to alert the other authorities, we would be getting some kind of alert from Pano that, hey, Aspen Fire, is this a fire? Is this a real fire? Is this a campfire? At least we have some sort of redundancy built into the program, at least during the time this project is ongoing. So, you know, one thing it could help us do on number 2 there is provide real-time actionable intelligence. What that could do is potentially let us take a look at it, or others take a look at this and go, wow, this is a real fire. Give us an opportunity to maybe start ordering resources sooner than later, if we can tell that something is going to be could potentially be a very large fire. So it gives a little bit of earlier warning potentially of what it really looks like. If you look at that great photo from, not a great photo, but the photo from Grizzly Creek Fire, and, you know, if we got that early on, it may give us some early detection that this is going to be a real big fire potentially. So, and I think one of the more important ones here, though, is number 3 is drive leadership at the state and national levels in developing technology. It's interesting enough is Vail Fire Chief had heard about this project, and very soon after it got public, and he actually called me and wanted to get more information, because Vail Fire was also looking at something similar to this, and he put in their strategic plan to potentially find some sort of system like this for early detection in their valley as well. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they would have already been talking about that. And also, even if nothing else comes out of this project, this pilot project, at least, the very least we've been able to do at Aspen Fire in our community is help train AI. And I think those guys will talk about that in a little while. So help train their AI so they don't get false positives going forward. We're helping in Colorado determine, hey, that's just fog coming off the river, or it's a campfire. I think there's some important value in that will, even if we don't end up using it permanently, we've at least helped the community in general, in the fire community in general, and trying to learn more about wildfire starts. And one other important, last one I'll just touch on real quickly is, I've also been in contact with some insurance companies. One item there, and we'll talk about this later on here, is there some kind of value add that the insurance companies might be able to put on to our community, because they have this extra umbrella of safety, for lack of a better word, or umbrella of quick detection that might be some way help our homeowners and taxpayers get better insurance coverage, or at least not get dropped. So it's something that's still ongoing. I know, you know, much like they do for other areas to get insurance, better insurance if you have a 20,000 gallon tank in your front yard, for instance. So there's some interest in that at the insurance level, looking into that. So that's what I've gotten for now. We can talk a little bit later about a few other stuff. So, any questions on that from anybody?
I see no questions from the board.
Well, I could
Oh,
ask
Greg,
one, if I could, Rick. So this is a pilot project. It'll end at a certain time. If it's successful and we love it, what will the price tag be? And do we have any idea what this is going to cost? And could we even afford it if it after the pilot ends, it's proven to be successful?
We haven't gotten that far yet, Greg, in terms of what that might look like. It's something that we want to evaluate at the end of this program. We'll be giving if this moves forward, we'll be giving the board a complete update in November of successes and failures, so you guys get a chance to look at this.
Okay, I've got some other questions also, but I can wait through the presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, I have questions too, but I'll wait till you're done. Francie, did you have anything?
No, I'm good at this point, thanks.
Okay. Steve, are you good at home? Okay, all right.
Yep, I've got questions I'm holding till the question period.
Okay, good. Okay, Rick, you can go forward.
Okay, and actually I'll step in at this point. This is Jake Anderson with Aspen Fire. I'm Deputy Chief Operations here. And I'll let you guys read the slide. I won't read that back to you. But sort of the portion that I'm in charge of detailing here is just the change that we've experienced over the past couple decades. I don't think any of you are strangers to this. I think most people are acutely aware. But the wildfire picture in the state has increased dramatically in a very bad direction. You know, I remember in 2000 there was a fire in Mesa Verde called the Bircher Fire. And that was big talk all over the state amongst firefighting agencies. You know, have you heard about this big, huge fire in Mesa Verde? And that one ended up being a total of 23,000 acres, which at that time was the largest timber fire in recorded Colorado history. So since then, you know, 2000, we had our first 100,000 acre fire with the Haven fire. Missionary Ridge also went above, I think, 80, 90,000 that year. Since then, we've had several 100,000 acre plus fires in the Front Range. So again, this isn't anything new, especially to this group. But the reason I bring that up is the fact that we had a fire last year in October at high elevation, run 100,000 acres, you know, more than 5 times the size of the largest recorded timber fire in Colorado history, just 20 years prior. And it did that all in one day. It jumped the Continental Divide. And I want to say it moved a total of 19 miles. So the game for wildfire fighting in the state of Colorado has completely changed. And what this represents as far as to you and the community is our desire to be proactive, to try to find new ways to kind of deal with this and manage this stuff. If you go to the next slide, Jeff, you'll actually get some pictures of the East Troublesome fire. You know, and when you look at this, you guys were talking about that cumulonimbus from yesterday, and I think before most of you were on here, Mr. Child was discussing a pyrocumulus and how much it looked like that. Well, this is a pyrocumulus, a pyrocumulonimbus actually, created by the massive amounts of convective current that come from a large wildfire. And if you look at the very top of those clouds, you start to see that UFO shape. And what that is that's ice capping. That's the moisture getting pushed so high up in the atmosphere, it's actually starting to freeze. So this fire at this point is completely creating its own weather, doing whatever it wants. It's not going to be influenced by anything else. So understandably, I think, at least from this standpoint, I think most of us are on the same page that we're all very worried about this problem. And, you know, one of our goals is early detection and then early suppression. And then I'll pass this on for the next section. Thanks. Unless you guys have questions for me.
I think we're good.
Great. Hi, everybody, and thank you for your time. I'm Arvind Satyam. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Pano, and I have Rafi Sands, who's part of the business development team as well. Pano is a company, we're about 12 months old, but our journey started really in January 2020, which just prior to COVID, I grew up in Sydney as a kid, and I was no stranger to bushfires, as we call them. But what happened their summer was unprecedented. It was 10x what they'd seen historically. At that point, I was at Cisco, where I was building and scaling their IoT business globally. And so we were really used to seeing advances in IoT and AI applied to other domains, right? Whether it be self-driving cars, whether it be IoT deployed in city environments to automate parking, and a number of other things. And we really wanted to understand, could emerging technology be applied better to this space? How could we add value to this? And so this is where Sonia, who's CEO of this business, and her background's also in IoT and AI, we went through discovery from about February to June and really tried to understand what was the correlation between early detection, response, and how could technology be better applied to that. So I want to take you through the journey, but really jump into the demo. Just in terms of the company itself, we're about 24 people today. We went through 2 rounds of funding. We're investing significantly into our AI and our intelligence center, and we're targeting 5 commercial pilots, and a number of which are in California, but also one in Oregon, and we're really looking for this to also understand the fuel and the environmental conditions in Colorado. So one of the first things that we learned is that it's not that the number of fires have dramatically increased, it's the number of mega fires that have dramatically increased. And so what the response has been is to really add additional attack resources and suppression resources. So that's really led to an increase in cost, but it hasn't necessarily put a lid down on the response time itself. In California, 6 of the 10 largest fires in California history started since August 2020. So this is something that really has been accelerating. The worst fire season before that was 2017, 2018. where PG&E, it led to the bankruptcy of PG&E at that time. So there was clear awareness that technology could be a force multiplier. And if we move to the next slide. And what we did is we tried to understand what the regulatory bodies, so the utility commission spent a lot of time studying the value of emerging technology. In the case of California, Governor Newsom and team had a report out that looked at the value of early attack and how emerging technology could make a difference. So there was clear awareness that early fire and leveraging technology for early fire response could make a difference. If we move to the next slide. CAL FIRE's goal is to contain 95% of the fires within the first 10 acres. And Oregon Department of Forestry has done some historical analysis on this. So if you look at 95% as the target, if they were able to contain it, if they were able to contain it, that leads to a 1% improvement on that leads to a reduction in suppression costs. And if you get in at 94%, the suppression costs jump by 2 to 3x. So there is a clear correlation between being able to contain fires quickly and what it leads to in terms of the overall cost of suppression and response. And the biggest determinant that's been found for containing fires within the first 10 acres is how quickly you can get eyes on the fire, confirm the fire, and then coordinate the appropriate response. And I think that's one of the key things, as Chief Ballantyne mentioned, that we want to trial as part of this pilot. We go to the next slide. And there's three key steps in terms of being able to detect and lead to response. So the first thing that we do as part of our solution is we have high definition cameras. There's 2 of them that are rotating 360 degrees so that we can build a perfect panorama where you can see the entire 360 degree perimeter. It's one of the key differences between us and other camera providers out there. We're actually using software to stitch this, and we'll show you that as part of the demo. The next thing that we do is apply the artificial intelligence onto that feed. And in addition to that, we're also pulling in satellite alerts so that we can provide actionable intelligence to the fire department, to dispatch authorities that can then quickly look at the fire and confirm whether that's a prescribed burn, whether that's small, whether that's an incident that needs an immediate response, so they can quickly size this up. And then we also build a set of tools that can provide you a more precise latitude and longitude, and then disseminate to a number of stakeholders on a need basis. And that can be controlled access, where you can determine who needs to be brought in as part of that response. All of these steps are part of the workflow of the Pano tool. So one of the other things we heard from stakeholders is that there's a number of different data points that it'd be great to tie these things together to really empower fire authorities, make it faster, but also make it safer for response. Move to the next slide. The solution itself has, as I mentioned, 2 high-definition cameras. There's also an edge computer that's really processing the AI. The cameras are rotating 360 degrees every minute, and we're taking 10 images to get stitched together to build 2 panoramas. The hardware itself is 6 megapixels. We spent a lot of time looking at how do we optimize the hardware to get the best results related to AI. The optimal range is 10 to 15 miles, but you can see much further out on a clear day. But one of the other things that we found that's very beneficial to end users is being able to triangulate. So if you can get a closer proximity and you have 2 cameras that overlook a certain incident, you can have a much more precise latitude and longitude, which can really help with response. And then there's also 45x optical zoom, but we're also doing a lot from a digital zoom standpoint. Ideal placements could be mountaintops, utility towers, weather stations, cell towers. And we're actually looking at 4 municipal towers in Aspen. And as we show you on the map, we can also discuss why they were chosen. But it's really a lot of it's tied to the locations that would provide the adequate coverage, but can also enable the triangulation side of it. From a connectivity standpoint, we have a range of connectivity options. The amount of bandwidth that's needed is really low because the software itself has been optimized to really do this even in lower bandwidth environments. We need 2 megabytes per second, 4 megs to do this, which is really low relative to, for instance, the Ethernet connectivity that's coming out of the comms towers. And the power requirement is equivalent to what you would need to power up a MacBook Pro. And so it's pretty low in terms of the power requirement as well. I'll pause here and see if there's any questions, and then right after this, we'll jump right into the demo so you can see the solutions itself and the number of the field units that we've got up.
Yeah, Greg's got a question here, and Steve, I can't see you, so.
I was just wondering, how does the resolution on this 6 megapixel camera compare to, say, that from a satellite or other technology out there? What kind of resolution are we talking here?
Sure. Great question. So in terms of satellite, we're pulling in satellite feeds. If you look at the NOAA weather satellites, they actually come up with a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer pixel. So the satellite's not going to provide you video that's going to give you enough granularity. What satellites are good for is to really look at heat anomalies. So it's really looking at hot versus cold, and it can tell you there's a potential fire or not. But what we've found, as we've spoken to a number of end users that are using satellite, there's a number of false positives. For instance, solar throws off satellites on a hot day. Big solar rays would reflect, and the algorithm thinks that could be a potential fire. But this is where coupling a satellite feed with the cameras gives the fire authorities eyes on the fire. The cameras become the ground truth because you've got the ability to zoom in and say, is that a potential fire or not? Satellites also have a good place at nighttime because you can clearly distinguish at nighttime if it's a fire or not, because you can see that from the color itself, and also the hot-cold ratio comes out much clearly. And so these are very much a complementary solution. That's why we paired both of those together, and that's directly integrated into the workflow.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions, or can we move forward? Steve?
Speaking of detecting heat at night, is there any sort of capability on your cameras of detecting infrared, so at nighttime they could detect a hot spot, which potentially could be a fire?
Absolutely, Steve. So the cameras themselves have near infrared, and so we're working on 2 AI models. One's for day and one's at nighttime. And so with near infrared, it would be much harder 10 to 15 miles out, obviously at nighttime, but you are able to see, you're able to do detection at nighttime as well. But I think this is where during the day, and we'll show you some scenarios that we're already picking up when it comes to day examples, right? Everything from a bluebird day where it's easier to see smoke to what would it look like on a hazy day to fog to the marine layer up in California. So we're giving the AI as many of those type of scenarios. And then we think satellite's going to do a great job at nighttime, and then we're also applying the AI model at nighttime as well. So it'll be a combination of all of these together.
Okay. I think we can continue to move forward.
Great.
Let me go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll give it to Rafi.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rafi Sand. I'm with Pano. I want to thank the board for having us this afternoon, and I'd love to actually take you into the technology itself, give you a little bit of a demo, and then happy to take any other questions afterwards. So I'll start here on our home page, and let me know, can you all see the screen sharing here?
Yep, we got it.
Great. So you'll see on the right, there's a map view. These are some of our R&D units that are up in the Bay Area. And as Arvind said, we're deploying in 4 or 5 different regions this summer. And on the left here, you see 2 different panes. One of these is for incidents, and one of them is for stations. For the station's view, you'll see a thumbnail for each of these cameras. And the incidents pane, this is where you can actually get an alert that comes in from our AI when smoke has been detected. It's also where you can go in once a fire has been marked as confirmed, and you can monitor that fire as it's evolving. And lastly, you can go back in time and look at closed fires to actually go deep on where they started and how they evolved over time for post-incident analysis. So I'll first take you in to just show you what the camera feeds actually look like themselves. So again, these are some of our R&D cameras in the Bay Area. And for each of them, you can see that there's two different strips, 180 degrees each. So you have a total of 360 degrees of visibility. And you can click in here to play a time lapse.
Oh, wow.
And I'll take you into the station to show you how we're doing this. Because for us, obviously the AI was a big piece of our R&D. But the second piece of innovation here that's really a breakthrough is that our cameras are actually rotating, as Arvin said, 360 degrees every minute, and they're taking images at 10 different points. The images, once they're captured, are then transmitted to an edge computer that's located on site, which processes the images, gets the file size down, and then sends them up to the cloud. Once they're there in the cloud, they're processed by a software application that we've built that stitches these images together in live time. So you can see as I pan around here, it's almost as if we're in a cylinder, and we can see in all directions without having to actually take control of the camera itself. And so from any point, I can digitally zoom in and play a time lapse. And this is really important because for one, it means that we'll capture smoke no matter which direction it is in perspective of the camera. Number two, it means that you can have multiple users who are looking in different directions and at different zoom levels at the same time. So you can have someone in an engine who's using these cameras to point themselves to an incident, while at the same time you have someone at a dispatch center or a utility, or potentially one day with an insurer, right, who's using this footage and imagery to help inform their response processes. You'll see the top left here, there's a mark fire button, which creates a new incident. This would be a manual way to do that, but I'll show you how our AI automates that process. I'll go back to our home page first and give you a sense of what an incident actually looks like. So once an incident has been tagged in that same method, it gets added to this list, and we can click into this incident page, and that imagery gets saved in time from that moment on. And you can actually go back and look at that fire, and you can see how quickly is it moving, what shape is it making. I think, Jake talked a little bit about the East Troublesome fire and the early indicators based on the behavior of that smoke column. This is the kind of intelligence that is so many times more valuable than a 911 report when you can look at this as a fire expert and say, here's how we need to respond. And so on this incident page, you can see the historical footage, as well as if the incident is live, this one is closed, you can go back and you can look at live camera footage as well. And the incident page can actually be shared out via a unique link for others in the county who could benefit from being able to look at this footage.
The other thing, just Rafi on this one, the other thing that you'll notice is that part of the image is pixelated, and that's from the standpoint of privacy. What we want to do here is, our goal is to provide actionable intelligence and really help fire authorities and others understand fires. We are pixelating any of the private property, so that's where you'll see parts of that that's protected.
And that's something we could look into in Aspen as well. I think most of the 4 sites we've looked at that we'll share in a few minutes are way up high on a mountain, so they're not on private homes like this. But I'll show you how the AI works and how an alert comes in. And so this is just with some dummy data to show an example of an AI alert coming in. And so first what happens is the AI will detect smoke, and maybe I'll give you an example of that. This is the AI running on our camera feed, and you see that it very quickly draws a box around smoke when it detects smoke. And some of these here, in an image like this, you can see that this is not something that if you were manually watching cameras, you could detect. And that's the reason why today most cameras for wildfire purposes are being used for monitoring, but they're not being used quite as much for detection because there hasn't really been a commercial grade AI technology like this one that can automate this process. And so we were really impressed by the first iteration of this model. Our lead of our AI team was working on self-driving at Tesla before this, where the consequences of having a false positive are obviously a lot higher. So this is a little bit of a walk in the park for him. But you'll see on something like this, most people expect that AI is just tuned to look for one aspect like color, but that's not quite the case. It's actually looking for a number of factors, including texture, as well as movement, right? So smoke moves differently than fog and clouds. And so all these inputs get put into the model, and it's able to very quickly draw a box when it sees smoke. Now, once the AI has detected smoke, an alert gets pushed to our intelligence center. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But the intelligence center will say, okay, there's a possible fire that's been detected with our AI, and an incident page is created. As before, here you see a box that's drawn around that smoke. And what they'll then do is go in to mark this fire. And that's with that same button I showed you before. And we'll do the best we can to hit the base of that smoke. And the reason we do that is that, especially if we are able to see this incident from two different cameras, we can triangulate exactly where that smoke is coming from. And that's a really big deal for early response, because today when someone calls 911 and they say there's a fire on the hill, but it's actually on the second hill, and there's a big valley between those hills, the time it takes to discover where that is and change the route and the process of response can be really impactful on the ultimate impact of the response. So once a fire has been marked and confirmed, the authority has the ability to disseminate the information out to folks in the field or other emergency personnel. We think a picture is worth 1,000 words, a time lapse or a video is worth even more. Someone like Jake can look at this and get a real sense of how we need to respond differentially to this incident versus other incidents. And we can send that out in something like a text message or an email, which will include that imagery, and our mobile website as well. The last thing I'll show you, I think, there was a question about satellite. And so our platform, which is software and AI on top of these cameras, seeks to integrate additional hardware data sources. And that starts with cameras and satellites. Eventually, we will move to other inputs like air quality measure. But what happens with satellite is we're able to pull an API from NOAA, from their GOES 16, 17 satellites, and say there's this heat anomaly here that we mentioned. And satellite has been looked at for detection, but for reasons Arvin described, there have been a lot of false positives and challenges in actually implementing this day to day. Where we think we can make a difference is by combining satellite with camera, because we can very quickly pull up the nearest camera, which, because it's recording in all directions at all times, we will have that view and we'll be able to draw a box around where we expect to see smoke very quickly for our intelligence center to be able to go in and review and say, this is a true incident or this is a false positive. And that's how satellite adds another layer on top of the AI detection on the cameras themselves. So maybe I'll pause for any questions while Jeff pulls back up the slides.
Okay, and just on a time frame, since we started late, we have another big item on our agenda for today, but we do have some flexibility in time because our meeting was going to be a little shorter today. So I know there are a lot of questions from people who are sitting in the room with me, and I know Steve at home. So do you want to let them finish with their presentation, and then we can start doing our checklist of questions we have?
Sure.
Yeah, so why don't you guys just wrap it up,
Okay.
and then we'll get it back to the board and to Sheriff DeSalvo and the county manager to clarify some information.
Great. I think I've covered most of these features, so maybe we can jump to the next one here, Jeff. And I'll give you kind of an overview of the AI itself. There's two key aspects of this. that differentiate it from, I think, other results out there, which have mostly been academic so far for AI detection for wildfires. Our model is very good from day one, and we're very happy with it. 95% of fires can be detected in under 15 minutes. But I think more important than the actual results on paper is that we've built out the process flow on the right here, where our camera feeds send that data through our AI, and then our intelligence center reviews the AI alert before anything gets pushed out to end users. And the reason for this is twofold. One is that it means that the alerts going to emergency response are only true incidents, right? And so we're not disrupting workflow with lots and lots of false positives that would take away time, critical time on red flag days from emergency personnel. The second factor that I think is equally, if not more important, is that because we have this intelligence center review, we can actually tune our model to have many more false positives. We actually tune it up to get more false positives, because with more false positives, we get more true detection. And with those, we're actually feeding the model significantly more data at a faster rate. Because every time someone in our intelligence center clicks to mark a new detection as correct or as false, that data goes back into the model. So that over time, we believe in a few years, we won't actually need a human to review every AI alert that comes in, because the model will be good enough on its own with sufficient training data to detect only true incidents.
And that's been a key differentiator for us when it comes to some of the early pilots and early customer traction that we're having. In addition to potentially this pilot in Aspen, we are deploying up in Sonoma County as well as Lake County in California. We're also working with PG&E and in California, as well as Portland General up in Oregon. What's interesting is that the utilities have been thinking about system hardening and investing in wildfire mitigation. Last week, we were selected as part of a pilot for EPRI with PG&E and Portland General as the two utilities that are sponsoring this. And we were the only vendor that was chosen as it relates to camera and AI technology. And I think some of these around the software, the intelligence center that we're staffing up, tying in multiple feeds have been a key part of the reason why I think we were selected as part of that.
Okay.
And in addition to that, we've also had early discussions with Holy Cross in your territory, and as Chief Valentine mentioned, we're also in discussion with Vail and a number of other locations, and in parallel, we're also speaking with insurance carriers about how we could help them understand risk and response and what they could potentially share to the homeowners themselves as it relates to incidents, especially as they're coming closer to their own property.
Great. I think we'll turn it back to Chief Valentine to kind of give us some takeaways here.
Okay, and then we need to make sure we have time for the questions, because I can see notes being taken here, so. I gotta try and keep us on some level of track.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, thanks very much. I'll try to keep this really short. I did want to mention real quickly that someone's had fires in the last 2 days, both started by Power Grid. I'm happy that you guys are talking to power companies about trying to get involved in some of this process. But I won't go through all the scope, benefits, and outcomes. I just want to pick out a couple of key things here. On the first under scope, I think the one that's important there is number 3, web interface. Triangulation, in my view, is probably one of the best outcomes we could have on this, because we'll be able to, if it picks up by 2 cameras, we can get a lat long that we can share either with incoming aircraft, and or we can send a drone up there if necessary to try to pinpoint it. We actually have drones that are infrared capable. A couple years ago, we had one up on Red Mountain, way up top up there, and we knew it was a lightning strike. We went up there, we put our drone up in the air. We didn't have infrared then. We couldn't find it. It turns out there was a fire that had started up there. It was creeping around down the duff, but I went there a few days later and did find it. So if we'd have got two cameras on that, we'd have been able to triangulate and get resources on the ground. Luckily, that one didn't blow up, but it could have been worse than it was. Second one on benefits, I think the number 2 there, there's one that's missing. I'm going to tell you in a second, but visibility of community members, I think that's a pretty key important part. That can be visibility to community members, it can be visibility to the other agencies at any time. Anybody that wants access to these cameras in the public safety realm can get that, can have access to it. But also, if there's a big fire or any kind of incident going on, we can make it available for the community to actually log in and see what's going on almost in real time, which may be good or bad, but I think in the big picture it could be good. The one thing that's not on there in the benefits is number 3, which I think would be important as well, and that is it's expandable to other locations. So if this is a success with the four towers we have, it could actually be expanded to further down valley. It could be expanded to other locations. I've been in communication with STICO, and they said they'd be happy to get involved in some way if we needed to. So we can put even more cameras up if we want to make this program even more beneficial later on. And the last thing over on outcomes, I think their opportunity to demonstrate value add to property insurers, that's a pretty big deal in my view. If that actually happens and AI can really help benefit our community that way, I think that would be a win-win for everybody. And it might even help keep our responders safe. That's all I have on that, unless somebody has any questions for me.
Right, thank you. I think we need to start with questions. Or Joey, would you like to start us off here? Or do you want to wait for the board?
I can do either, Patty. I was actually here on another issue, but
okay.
I'm familiar with this. Thank you. So I could kick us off by saying that I've seen this presentation. It's clearly impressive. I passed on it for a couple of reasons. One, I was concerned about the money is private money, and I don't like that relationship between private money and government. The second issue was, and I'll be brief because of time, okay. The second issue was actually the permissions that need to be acquired for mountaintop repeaters, agreements with the county, and things like that have not been achieved yet. And Phyllis is, I assume, going to work on that if we get to this. As I said, when I first saw the presentation, it's impressive. When we started to look into it, we learned that there's other companies out there that are doing, similar things. I know the owner of this company, I believe, lives in Aspen, and that might be part of the attraction here, but this may have to go to an RFP at some time. I don't think they're proprietary enough to just be granted this. So although I think it's great technology, one of the questions we asked that wasn't quite answered yet was the altitude of our mountains and the valley floors. Does this smoke need to rise to a certain level before it's detected? And maybe that could be, or one of you could ask that question. But those were my concerns, and we met with Phyllis on that. And she's, the last thing was, if we are to send this through, I know Rick's willing to take on the calls from this when it first happens through the software. But if it were to go to the dispatch center eventually, that would need approval by the COM board. So I think there are some approvals and permissions that need to get there, and those are my concerns. But it's a board decision now, and those are my concerns.
Sure. DeSalvo, just one quick clarification. The owner, the CEO is based out of Silicon Valley, so out of San Francisco. There's a small minority investor that came in through a fund in our seed round that's based out of Aspen. So it's a very small investment as part of the overall company.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to turn to John Peacock to answer one of the issues I think that has been mulling around is the financial part of this and the county's history of private-public partnerships, et cetera. So, and some state statute, perhaps, or you want to clarify that for us, John?
Yeah, I don't know that I'll get into the state statute, but Joe, I think, is, as a law enforcement officer, is in a, profile where it is very difficult to accept any donations without creating a perception that that could be affecting how Joe is executing his role. And so I think there's a with the law enforcement responsibilities, there's just a little bit higher, not a little bit, it's a higher standard in terms of how private donations and or public-private partnerships are engaged in. In your legislative role, you also need to be concerned about creating conflicts. However, it is more common for at the legislative level or policy level for a board to be engaging in public-private partnerships where there is a public benefit to be gained because you don't have the same responsibilities that our law enforcement departments have in terms of exercising discretion and executing laws. And so the ask of the board, as I'm understanding it right now, and we may get some clarity on this, is really access to the towers to allow this test to move forward and see if there, if you feel that there's sufficient potential public benefit to that, as long as you can evaluate that that doesn't create a conflict for you in future decision making. I think Joe referenced some of those, like future procurement. So for example, if we were to procure a system and there are other systems that provide the same type of service, that when we're starting to put more resources on the table, we may need to go through a procurement process versus a sole source. In this case, what I'm understanding is what's being proposed is I don't know if I'll get the right term here, but a pilot project, for lack of a better term, where the technology is being proved and perfected in real world circumstances. I don't know. Have you all, I guess you could answer this question, have you all gone to market with this yet, or are you still perfecting the process?
Yes, we have. So the units that you saw the AI being trained on were our field units that we've deployed in November. And right now we're working on commercial pilots. As I mentioned, we're in commercial pilot with PG&E and with Portland General. And we're also deploying with a number of other players in California. But the goal this summer season is to really do a handful of partnerships, if you like, with end users where we can learn, train the AI, and then really review at the end of the fire season. So definitely it's commercially available, and as you're seeing, the AI is already picking up results.
Okay. And so, it seems to me there are probably a few areas of decision making that are in front of the board. One is just the impact on county infrastructure, and that's probably something that let's see, I'm trying to see who we have on the call here. Jeff Kruger is on the call. That's good. That's probably something that Jeff could answer so that you'd understand that. The second, and Rick, I think maybe getting some clarity around the relationship and the specific ask of the board, if this is to allow the cameras to be placed for a specific period of time, and then the process forward. I think Joe laid out there's some more administrative kind of pieces that need to be laid out, and where do you want those to be in terms of resolution before you have the technology placed? Those are three kinds of questions.
So technology in the pilot program placed?
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, did you want to comment? Because I have concerns about staff time and the ability for, can you take on one more thing? And the issue also came up with dispatch and how we deal with that. And so I think I have concerns about maybe not a financial impact to the county, but we have a staff that's already pretty busy.
Hey, Patty, this is Rick. I can speak to that. There is absolutely zero staff time by anybody from the county side. During this pilot project, Aspen Fire staff will be the only ones really involved in the staff time. That's why I said it's not free, but its cost is minimal to us. Our staff here will be the ones monitoring, working with Pano AI to help train their AI. There's no other county staff time.
Well, I appreciate that, Rick, but the slide right in front of me says county staff will configure a virtual network. So is that county staff that's having to do that work?
Yeah, hey Patty, this is Jeff. That's a little different. What Rick was talking about was data dissemination. So the actual fire incident alarms will not be sent to dispatch. They will only be going to Aspen Fire. But the telecom department will be creating a virtual network in order to transfer data. The prototype or pilot project will be installed on 4 mountaintop sites. So the system does require county infrastructure. We will be mounting cameras on the towers. We will also be using our microwave backhaul to transfer data. And so for the 4 sites, we have to create a virtual private network in order to transfer that data. But that's really, that takes my team 20 minutes to do.
Okay.
It's
I'm gonna hold you to that on the clock, because it's taken us 2 hours
yeah,
to
it's
do
a very
this
simple
meeting.
configuration that we do within our microwave network, and we do it all the time. And we're experts at doing it.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing, so the real impact to county infrastructure is, again, the cameras being mounted on the towers. There's a small amount of power that's required for the cameras, 76 watts. The cameras do take a 6 megapixel picture every minute. They're all stitched together. And those pictures then are in turn sent across our microwave backhaul. That will not exceed 4 megabits per second. Our county microwave backhaul is 2 gigabits per second. This is really just in the noise in terms of what the impact is to our microwave system. In addition to that, we can set what's called quality of service, and we will for this. It will have the lowest quality of service, public safety being number 1, broadband being number 2, our TV translator system being number 3, this being number 4. It will have the lowest priority, but still, we have such a huge breathing room, really, within our microwave network. This is not going to impact it at all.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And then the other thing, too, is approvals and permission. We have to figure that one out, because we're not going to do formal leases for space on our translator sites. Correct, John? But we don't know that.
We were not recommending a lease, but we were looking at potentially doing an IGA or maybe even just an MOU. This is a temporary installation from July through November.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, but I just want to make sure that was something that had come up in this discussion. So I'm going to move it to the board.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to move it to the board. And then I think at some point, Joey's point about altitude, the valley floors, is a really good one, because we do have dips. So, but I'm going to get the board involved here in this discussion. Greg, please.
Okay.
You're first on the go.
Thank you for this. Jeff can anticipate my question is, are we going to need permissions from the Forest Service or BLM or anyone else? I've been banging the gong and ringing the bell about just trying to get improvement of our KDNK radio signal and some of the other radio stations, and it sounds like it's going to be a full year before anything can happen because of the permissions with the Forest Service. So can we go up there and start messing around with hardware and not trigger some sort of permissions thing that just stuffs the whole thing up? That's my first question.
Good.
The second one is, so really what I'd like to do is making our radio repeaters and translators tie it to this, because this is going to get expedited, I can just tell. The second thing was, let's see here while I'm on it, I'm in favor of this. I think this is useful. I'm concerned about the priority. If we're in a, what I'm gonna call a stage one, or, imminently stage one fire restriction, period going in, I'd like to make sure that this system isn't in such low priority that we miss a fire. Let's make sure this thing can really function, and I'm sure you guys are thinking that way. I just wanted to bring it up. And then regarding some of the people I know have talked about privacy, and I just wanted to say, sentries and fire lookouts have been used ever since management of forests, and I have no problem with it. I don't think these cameras are going to be swooping into people's windows. I'm pretty confident that that's not a problem. If anybody goes skinny dipping, they're open to public scrutiny anyway, right, Joey? Okay, those are my questions
Not
and my
if they're
comments.
And we're pixelating it, Greg, so.
And you're pixelating it. Got it. So regarding permissions, I think that's where I am.
So,
Hey, Greg, I can quickly answer your question on the Forest Service. Yeah, some of our sites are on Forest Service and BLM land. Our leases are such that we can add antennas, microwave gear as we see fit on these towers. The towers and the facility and the site plan itself was approved. We have the we have the flexibility to add equipment if we want to.
Okay, that includes a nice radio repeater.
I knew he was coming with that. All right, Greg, are you
I'm
good?
done.
Francie, please, and then Steve, I'll let you have the floor after Francie.
I just wanted to ask Jake, what do you think about this? Do you think it'd be an enhancement for the fire department?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's kind of been touched on. There are other companies out there that do this, and it's not necessarily a brand new concept, but what I'll say is that this is the first one that I've seen in my career that appears potentially viable and really useful. For me to be able to sit back even at a computer screen and say, man, I should order an air tanker right now, that's a big deal. I could do that still 20 miles away from it, potentially. I had the benefit of a lot of my career working on a helitack crew, and being able to see something from an aerial view gives you just so much a better picture and a better idea of what's going on than pulling up and being stuck down in the trees and trying to figure out what's happening. So there's just so many potential benefits to this. I don't know if it's going to work for sure, but I think it will, and I think it'll add value. And for me, I think it's a worthwhile try. I really do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions?
No.
Steve, I can come back to you if you think of it. I can see your brain working. Steve, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, a couple of technical things. We get a lot of wildfire smoke in the valley from fires from other states or other parts of the state. Will this panel system be able to distinguish that smoke, or will it pick it up as wildfire smoke without knowing the source of it? And will that confuse the whole identification system?
So Steve, the system's trained to pick up any smoke, and then what we would do is the intelligence center would then alert, let's say Jake is the first one to get notified on this. Initially, we're not going to make a distinction on whether it's a prescribed burn or a smoke or one that's coming from over the valley. We want to provide that actionable intelligence where AFPD has the ability to look at it pretty quickly and say, that's in this region or it's coming from another valley. So what the system is going to do is try and pick up any whiffs of smoke.
Okay. Question for Jeff. When is the Upper Red remodel project going to be complete? And
Yeah, great question.
that's the one that had to do with providing the power line to it also? I can't remember.
No, yeah, great question, Steve. So Upper Red remodel we're planning to start that mid-July, and that includes a complete remodel of the shelter, as well as the tower is not going to be replaced, but we are going to take everything off the tower. We're going to combine antennas, put up a new microwave system. We're going to recable the tower. So at that time, those last 2 weeks of July is when we plan on doing that work. And at that time, we can also get the Pano camera installed and cabled over to the shelter. So the plan is to do the first 3 sites, the two first weeks of July, and then Upper Red within the last 2 weeks of July.
Okay.
Okay.
The site is a solar-only site also, Steve. It does not have grid power.
Okay. A third technical thing, this past week at CCI, we heard a presentation from the Colorado Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division. Colorado now has the first in the continental United States, a series of mountaintop cameras that are 360-degree view for benefit of pilots to be able to see in real time what the weather is doing in the vicinity they're going to be flying through or to. So there is one of these on Sunlight Mountain, and there's another one somewhere in the Aspen area. I don't know exactly where they put it in Aspen. It's kind of a similar thing to this. I think it's a continuous, they have a whole bunch of cameras pointing in 360-degree directions. If there was any way you could tie into the Aspen one and the Sunlight one, just to have another kind of an early warning detection system, to see that there's smoke somewhere, and then your other cameras could, you know, try to track it down more specifically. But I could see melding the two systems and, you know, getting a wider area of coverage.
Steve, that's a great point, and I think we'll learn more about that camera network. You know, another point that's kind of tied to that is our system's designed to integrate other camera networks. So from the get-go, we wanted to make sure that we're able to build best-of-breed AI that really works on top of high-definition cameras. Over time, we certainly see a scenario where there'll be some Pano stations, but they may be existing camera networks. So, you know, and we'll look into that and see if that speed is potentially available. If it's not something we do during this pilot time, it's something we'll certainly explore. And the system is designed to integrate other camera networks. All we need is access to the API.
Hey, Steve, this is Rick, real quick on that too, to follow up. We have talked to, and I've talked to Skico about this as well. As you know, they have cameras up on the mountain types as well. They are willing and able to partner with us on, and or the county on this at some future date if this proves successful. So they're anxious to help with these too.
I think Greg
Okay, great.
Steve, just
like really good possibilities for, you know, tying the different systems together.
did you want to jump in on that?
And last of all, the issue of the private donor, I personally welcome if someone is, you know, has a deep pocket and is willing to help fund a program like this. I welcome that donation. I personally would rather never know who the person is who made the donation. So then we could show no favoritism if we don't know the person who donated money. It would be completely anonymous, and I think that could be a standard that, you know, to me, would keep it very transparent, and that person would never be shown any favoritism. Make a donation kind of as a backhanded way of doing a bribery or something would be how it could be seen by the public.
The problem with that, Steve, the problem with that was it was in the newspaper.
The
Well,
donor?
I hardly read the newspaper. Okay. Well, I haven't read that, so they're anonymous to me, Patty.
All right, Steve, I promise I won't tell you. I promise.
We'll just keep you in the dark.
Okay.
All right, Steve, you had some more?
So, I'm really in favor of, you know, doing this pilot project this year. I think this is a great system, especially tying it in with the satellite system. I remember in other fire years seeing local fire officials driving around the county roads, especially after a lightning storm, looking for smoke.
Yeah.
Because they would have a record of where the lightning strikes were, and they were actually going in a vehicle to just be able to get a view everywhere that they could. this would be a lot faster way to be able to look for smoke without having to drive around on the county roads so much. So I'm in favor of doing this year, and I'm look forward to seeing the results of it.
Okay, I have
Can I add something about the press stuff? So that's my fault. I jumped the gun on that stuff, so I apologize for this becoming so discombobulated because of that. And Mr. Child, good point about the lightning. One of the things we could do with this too is take that lightning map and just sort of pay attention to those areas after that were to occur as well. But thank you all for your patience with the political newbie and me dropping the ball and all that. So.
Jake, you know, you're there. We all still do that, so you know, it won't be
I'm
the
a
first
newbie
time.
too, Jake.
So I have some questions. Most of my questions have been pretty much answered, but I think, you know, looking at the placement of these cameras, we're a small valley, and we cross 3 counties, and we cross multiple fire protection districts. So I want to make sure that this information, because these cameras might show a fire that's in the Carbondale Fire Protection District, or in, you know, the what is it, Snowmass, no, Roaring Fork. I can't remember, Scott keeps changing the name on me. Basalt area, or, you know, the Snowmass area. So we need to make sure that this information gets dispersed to the jurisdiction that has the authority to respond to that fire. And also in the U.S. Forest Service, because, you know, we have such a high percentage of our land in our valley is owned by the Forest Service or BLM. So that information needs to be disseminated across the board, not isolated. I think that's critical, because we don't want to wait till the fire spreads into Pickens County, you know, because the county line's right there. That almost happened with Lake Christine. We were all holding our breath. So I think that's a key issue that I would like to see addressed. And then looking at the time frame, you just had the slide up there. It's going to take us a while to get, if the board decides to move forward. We don't vote in work sessions, so everybody knows. We give staff direction to bring things back to us if we need to approve them in a formal setting, which is a regular meeting. Our next regular meeting is on the 23rd, which is a little soon for us to be having any documents before us, because the packet is due Thursday, right? So help me, John, with a time frame.
And one of the questions I'll have for John Ely is, since this is less than a year, do we need to execute a formal lease document that comes back, or can we act administratively with board direction? Okay. So let me have that conversation with him. And
okay. You know, and my bottom line is, you know, I'm well versed in wildfires. I grew up in Southern California, and those fires, I mean, those forests burn down on a, as we know, more than regular basis. But I also spent a lot of time with the volunteer fire department here in Aspen community, and I did a lot of work on a state and national level with bark beetle kill and wildfire issues. So I'm very well versed in this. Having early detection is key, I think, but you know, again, I want to be protective of Jeff's department and county staff and the county general fund dollars. So I need to be sold on the fact that staff can absorb any tapped time, and that no funds will be required from Pickens County at this point in time, and we'll just have to see how things goes if we decide to make this a permanent program. And I'm going to let Joey Scott his.
One quick thing,
Yeah,
Patty.
please.
I think you brought up a real good point. Relatively, the Aspen Fire Protection District is small compared to the size of Pickens County and our adjacent fire districts. I have not heard, maybe Rick has, what the other districts feel about this. These cameras will be pointing into their districts
Right.
very easily. So I don't know where those detection calls will be fielded.
Yeah, that's a key issue. That furthers my point. We need to have all the partners in the valley in on this. If we're going to respond, you know, we have mutual aid agreements, which are key, but, you know, I think that needs to be addressed. Not today, but I'd like that information to come back to the Board of Commissioners. And Greg, I know you had some.
Only last thing to say is probably one best way to sort all this stuff out is to start the pilot project. So I just want to vote in favor of moving forward.
Except you can't vote in a work session.
Thank you, Patty. I know that. But I want to encourage us to do this and to move it forward, because we can answer all those questions, and they'll have to answer them. But perhaps the only way this will get done on a timely basis is to begin.
Well, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I'm saying this information I think needs to come back to the board at our next step. Whether or not we need to take a formal step, we have information that John still needs to bring back to us. And we can put it on our work session for, maybe for next Tuesday. I'll look at the agenda setting for next week.
Forgot about me.
Francie, yes, please.
So this is 4 cameras, and I'm wondering how many cameras would we need to do the entire Roaring Fork Valley as one entity?
Can you go back to the slide with the camera ranges on it? You have a great.
So the typical range is around 10 to 15 miles. The optimal range, I'll defer to Chief Valentine or Jeff in terms of what the extension would need to be.
As you can see here,
That's not really been examined, Patty. We would need to take the 10 to 15 mile circles that you're seeing in front of you and put them on all of our mountaintop sites and see what the coverage area is throughout the valley. County has 10 mountaintop communication sites today. So this is the result of 4 of those, but we would need to actually then take this a step further and see what the coverage and overlay maps look like on those other 6 sites.
So, I mean, like White River
we haven't done
National
that yet.
Forest is like 750,000 square miles, I think. And that's really where our fires are predominantly, is in the White River National Forest. So I think we're talking about quite a few cameras. And if we decide to go with this particular kind of detection system. Does
And
that seem that way to you, Jake?
But yeah, you make some really good points. I know that, initially the goal was obviously to cover around here, since we want to be as inclusive as possible of this, but we also don't want to force people into it. I think if people were interested, we would absolutely say, yeah. I think the Crown would be a good spot, Sunlight Mountain, and with just a couple additions, you would cover the majority of the valley. Our biggest concern is populations. For us, we're trying to make sure public safety. Behind that, yes, we're trying to protect our natural resources as well, and I think that would be a lot of the White Rivers, part of this. That's kind of where I would be if other people wanted to be included. And as far as alerting other agencies too, it's our goal that if people want this information, they can get it. They have it. But again, we're not going to force it on anybody. But you bring up a great point. I think we're just not sure if everybody wants it. Of course, we'd be willing to share it. It's not a secret, especially for public safety agencies. That's one of the goals of this. But I think our point in saying this comes directly to us is so that we're not committing anyone else to doing anything unless they want to be a part of it.
I see.
And Jake, if we need to add, sorry, just on that, if we need to add other agencies, we can do that very quickly with the system, as needed.
So which may be a question for what's the board, Joey? The Public Safety Board, or the?
Probably both the comm board and the public safety.
Yeah, I think this is worthy. I think it's something, I don't have a problem necessarily with doing a pilot program. Anything we can do to have that, initial response quicker is terrific. So I'm going to wrap this up now because we are way past, and I'm not doing a very good job keeping us on time because this is great information. So I appreciate it, everyone, and I have a feeling we will be talking again, hopefully sooner than later.
But aren't we supposed to decide whether or not we want to carry on with this? I mean, isn't that what the ask was today, whether or not we want?
We can't vote, so I think we've given direction to look into further information from John Peacock to see what steps through the county attorney's office we may or may need to take and put it back on a work session for Tuesday to see.
Yeah, I think the direction I took is that we should move the pilot forward. We have some details that still need to be worked out, and we can bring back whatever additional information we can bring back by next Tuesday, and maybe how any outstanding questions are going to be addressed.
Okay, well, without voting, I just want to say that this seems like a pretty amazing technology, and since this is just a pilot program, I hope we don't bury it in too much red tape.
Just have to make sure we're doing what's legally required of us.
I get it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, thank you, everyone. We
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank you all.
time, and again, I have a feeling we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. So we have now an hour discussion coming forward. John Ely, I'm sure you're there. Everybody's waiting for us, right? Or did Joey, do we want to slip, Joey, were you coming in for the fire?
Yes.
Yeah, if I can,
Let's go.
if I can, Patty, just a
Yeah,
minute.
that's fine.
We
Please.
are going into fire restrictions, advance of what the U.S. Forest Service is gonna do. I know Greg's been, I think you all got a, note from George Newman suggesting
Valerie,
that.
yeah.
Even before that, we were taking this seriously. So we will be in a stage 1 fire restriction starting midnight tonight. And I am conscious of your time, but I just wanna remember that I'm speaking to the people. What's not allowed as of midnight tonight, no personal fireworks. Any campfire or fire not within a permanently constructed fire grate or developed park, campground, private residence, or picnic area. No smoking except within an enclosed vehicle or building or an area cleared of all combustible materials. That basically means concrete or dirt. No explosive targets like the one that started our fire at Lake Christine. Operating or using any internal combustion engine without a spark arrestor. Lawnmowers are okay if they've got a spark arrestor. And lastly, welding except in cleared areas of at least 10 feet in diameter. So we will put out our flyer with the press release, the do's and don'ts, but we are ahead of the other counties that we neighbor. I think Eagle County's going in at midnight tonight as well. And Garfield's a little behind us, but I don't think they have the ERCs that we have. And the Forest Service, not speaking for them, I believe is going to be on Friday. So we should be all on the same page within the next 5 or 6 days.
Thank you, Joey. And I know we're keeping close watch on the ERC's
Energy release component. So when
the
they,
public knows what that means.
Right now, when
I
they
don't.
start to, okay, so energy release component is a science project that basically tells scientists the moisture content in trees, twigs, grasses, oaks, things like that. They take a sample, 90, we used to be at 80, was when we threw up the stage 1. It went to 90. So when they see 90, that it lacks moisture by 90%, that's what we get, becomes very combustible. And that's what we use as our barometer. The board a few years ago got a great presentation from Chief Thompson, and he explained that's how we were going to do it. We all agreed that we would base it on science, not licking our finger and sticking it in the air. So
I have a great book on it too, if you want to read.
Right now, we're close to the 90, and I think this is by far the right thing to do.
So I'm asking that because I want the public to be prepared that the stage 1 could go to stage 2 or higher at any point quickly.
Very quickly, and our long-range forecast is showing kind of this weather for 60 days or so.
Yeah,
And I
so-
want to remind everybody too, that just because we get a soaker one day, that doesn't change the ERC significantly. It still keeps us in a restriction.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
And I see
Joey.
Kelly
Thanks,
has
Joey.
joined us along her travels. So sorry, Kelly, we were delayed because John Peacock didn't drive fast enough coming in from, he wouldn't go in the emergency lane with flashers on. So we are here. John Ely is here. So let's do our next thing, which is the continued annual review of employee housing impact fee. Mr. Ely.
I may not be able to stay for this whole conversation just because I'm in a crunch to get back because Scott has an appointment this afternoon. So I will try to get my 2 cents in and stay as long as I can.
Well, Kelly, let me know when you want to throw in your 2 cents. Just signal me and I'll give you the time you need.
Thank you.
Well, keeping that in mind, I was going to go through the charts and the tables and so forth that are in the packet material. You know, as just a refresher of how the fee is calculated. But if the board is comfortable in launching right directly into a discussion, you know, that's certainly fine. I don't want to unnecessarily consume time. What's the feeling of that?
Well, it's Francie who, I don't know, do you have questions, Francie, back
I
how we
did,
establish
I had, no, I understand exactly where the numbers come from. There's one thing in the packet that I do need some clarification on, and it might come up, but I followed all the tables, and we had that presentation a little while ago that was very clear. I can't remember who it was, Rye, or I don't remember who it was. But then I got to this last one, just before we changed subjects in the packet, and it says the comparison of the 2021 proposed current fee utilizing unincorporated blah, blah, sales. And suddenly the highest figure, instead of being $500,000, is over $1 million. So it's just this last chart that I could use some explanation on. I don't know how everybody else feels about those charts.
Which is on chart number, it's the last two, attachment.
It's on page 30.
It should be up on the screen now, if you guys can see it.
I just couldn't figure out
You
how
have
you
that?
got from the
Yeah.
one before to that one.
We have it up on the screen, and
Oh.
screen, and I have it in front of me also.
Sure. So Francie, I believe this is what you're referring to, am I right?
Scroll down so I can see the bottom of it, please. Yes, that's it.
Okay. So the methodology used to adduce a fee that is actually imposed upon a development of one type or another is the lion's share of the discussion, I would say, that we had the last go around on this topic about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the point of imposing the fee on actual development, what you do is you're looking at the fee subsidy that has been calculated out per employee, and then looking at the number of employees generated by a particular activity, and then doing a simple multiplication. So the fee calculation for, say, commercial activity is fairly straightforward. We use APTA data as far as the number of employees generated for different types of commercial activity and different square footages of commercial space. And you just simply do that multiplication. In the realm of residential square footage, though, it gets more complicated. In fact, the data that we generated quite a few years now ago shows that it's not a straight multiplier effect, but a logarithmic one. So to give the board an idea of what the fees would be imposed on a few sampling sizes of square footage, that's what these charts are about, and these two on this, these last two in the packet material are an example of that. So if you look at the first half of this attachment, and this is that upper chart right here, what these reflect are the calculation of impact fees for representative square footages in residential construction, and that is right here, these square footages. It is for the fee based upon 100% of AMI, area median income. And then we compare it against either a variated schedule of mitigation, as illustrated here and here, or straight across 100% mitigation. And in this particular chart, the variable is on the location of the collection of sales data. So we're looking at a comparison between the unincorporated area of Pickens County, which is the area of sales data collection now, versus the entire county, which includes the municipalities.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at the header on each of these four columns, the way they're broken off. Oh, and I should say also on residential structures, there is a distinction. Our data clearly indicated a distinction between locally occupied and non-locally occupied structures as far as employment generation. At any rate, so you're looking, say, for this here is the current fee. So what we're doing is we're comparing at 100% AMI at varying rates of mitigation for a fee that is generated off of unincorporated Pickens County, which is exactly where we are right now. And here, what this is just changing the variable to all Pickens County
which is these two columns. And then over here, the last two major columns is, again, at the 100% AMI level. And we're looking at 100% across the board here, down like so. And with the collection data of unincorporated Pickens County, and then here, the 100% mitigation straight across with the collection data of all counties.
Right.
So naturally, this number is going to be the larger one, right?
But the
and this will be the smaller one.
But the second to last chart compared to the last chart is the difference between assuming the second to last chart is assuming that, yeah, okay, the average income is 85,000. But the last chart is actually saying, no, it's not really that. It's really 68,000. So therefore, we have to mitigate more because we have to cover more of the expense of somebody moving into the unit. That's the difference between the second to last and the last one, correct?
That's right. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
So this last chart is the $68,160 is the reflection of 80% of AMI. In other words, a household making 80% of the area median income.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. And then the other question is, so
wait, John, wait a sec, John, Francie.
So the other thing is the 15,000 square feet, it looks like for the non-locally occupied, the $1 million. So that's saying that if you build a house that's 15,000 square feet, you can expect to be employing 4 people-ish?
Basically, it's more complicated. It's actually very complicated in the employment generation because we look at not only the occupancy of the structure once it's built, but also the construction of it itself. And the construction numbers are based off of a theoretical life of the structure of 40 years, which is kind of on the high side around here in our particular area, given the propensity for starting from scratch on a lot of lots, even before the life of the building has been reached. So what we're doing is we're calculating the number of full-time employees generated in both the construction aspect and the occupancy aspect of the house.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Okay, John, proceed. Skylar, could you take that camera?
Thanks, Patty.
Because I'm not on Zoom. Thanks.
I guess the only other comment I would make is that, well, let's see here. When we went through the overall chart last time, which is this thing, this adduces this per employee fee or subsidy right here. So right now it's $214,532, and that is up from last year where it was $200,840, an increase of not quite 7%. Now that has already occurred, and that is automatic by virtue of the code language adopted by the board. However, there are a series of variables that are embedded in this calculation that are not changing. They are fixed unless the board directs them to be changed. So what this AIS or memo focuses on are 3 of these fixed variables. The first one being the rate of mitigation. In other words, once you figure out this number here, this is what it costs to mitigate 1 employee. Once you figure that number out, the board can decide not to require that amount to be fully mitigated. In other words, some reduced amount of mitigation could be required. Can't go over it, but you couldn't go below it. And right now, as we know, we've seen there's a varying rate for residential construction that increases as the house size increases. So that is one fixed variable for the board to consider. Another fixed variable is the area of the generation of sales data. Right now, we use sales data from the unincorporated areas of the county only, and that is being compared against the sales data that could be collected from the entire county, which would include our municipal areas. The third fixed variable that was compared in the memo is the AMI, as Francie and I were just discussing. So the AMI, the area median income, is a figure generated through HUD. And essentially what that represents is your target household income. In other words, right now at 100% AMI, and assuming a two-person household, our target income for that household is $85,200. So this calculation today works for families of two or households of two making $85,200 or more. It falls off if we are housing a household of two that makes less than that. When you go to AMI of 80%, that reduces it down to that 68,000 figure. Yeah, $68,160 a year. So that's a discretionary call again to the board to determine where you want to target the housing that is either procured or constructed to satisfy the generation of employment that caused the impact fee to be collected. So those three fixed variables are really the sum and substance of the discussion that is in front of the board. If we want to adjust those or not, they can only be adjusted through a code amendment. This is a land use code, so that code amendment would proceed through the P&Z for a recommendation to the board, and then a two-step ordinance for consideration and enactment by the BOCC.
Okay.
I have another question.
Francie? And
Any
then,
questions?
Yeah, so the AMI is calculated by, for the entire area, including Aspen,
Yes, it's for the entire county.
but the cost of building and all of that stuff is unincorporated in one scenario. I know you did it for the whole area in the other, right?
No, this does not look at cost of construction. This, our old fee did. This fee uses a calculus of simply an affordability gap, as it's referred to in the literature. So what we do is we look at the area mean income of our target household, and that's how it's reported by HUD, by household and by numbers of individuals in a household. So on average, affordable housing in Pitkin County has 2 individuals per unit. So we look at a household of 2 and 100% AMI, that's the number. If you have that much income, assuming the standard calculus for the determination of loans or even recommendations from organizations and agencies like HUD, that no more than a certain percentage, usually 30% of your income, be dedicated to either a rent or a mortgage payment, then what you do is you get to at the end of this, you get to a number that is essentially what's affordable by this income. And that is an acquisition of a home
Right, I get
in
that.
price range.
I get that, but when you talk about the value of the properties themselves, you talk about $633 per square foot, and so that's what it's based on. So that is the cost of construction, and I'm just wondering if that $633 per square foot is just the average cost of building in unincorporated Pitkin County, or does that include Aspen?
Right. No, like I said, it's not construction at all. What we do here after we get the affordable side of the equation is we look at actual sales of developed properties. So we look at sales of residential properties, and then we discriminate against certain sales, like properties that have more than 5 acres. Then the number of acres start to influence the sales price, so we just throw that out of the calculation. Or properties that have multiple residences, or properties that that have a residence combined with a commercial, element, like some, in-town properties that you see quite a few of. And so when you look at the sales data of residentially developed properties, you get a per square footage value. In other words, you'll see sales data that ranges.
Okay, yeah, I get that. So, but
Okay.
so it's sales data rather than construction data, but it's still based on the value of the property. So does that include Aspen? Does that all of the county?
Right now, the way our fee is constructed is that it analyzes the sales data from only unincorporated
Okay.
Dixon County.
That's
not
all I needed. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, she's good.
Okay.
I'm gonna swing this to Kelly, if you're ready.
I am ready, and if I can have permission to share my screen, I just want to pull up a quick item for us all to look at. So, I care about this issue deeply, as I know you all do, and I think it helps to kind of think of the context of need that we are thinking of, broadly of housing and how much need there is for housing in our community. And so, I'm going to rely on a couple of data points. The first being, can you all see that okay?
Yep.
Can try to zoom
Well,
in.
we need to.
See it, but I can't read it.
Okay. Well, I'll read it for you.
You can also
And
read it back
No, I
behind
can't.
you.
what this is data taken from the regional housing study that was completed in 2017, and that covered, Aspen through, I think Glenwood, and I think down to Parachute as well. And so what this is showing is just how much housing need there is in our community, and how that's kind of divided up based on categories of AMI. And hard for me to see it now that I've blown it up for you all, so I'm going to shrink it and read it.
Francie, you can also look at it here.
So we're looking at a need in the category of 60 to 100% AMI of over 3,200 units in the next 6 years. And I think it's quite possible that the pandemic has exacerbated this further. So if these numbers were produced today, that they would be even higher. I'm going to stop sharing. Also, DOLA in 2018, looked all over the state and kind of they have different regions of the state. And in every region of the state, it is not possible to afford a home at 100% AMI. So even if you're making 100% AMI, you still cannot afford to buy a home anywhere in your region, anywhere in the state. And then finally, as coming out of the pandemic, the governor's office held the Building Back Stronger listening tours, and housing was at the top of that list that communities reported need for. So I just want us to keep that in mind, because I think the discussion will be, how do we look at the impact fee, and how do we balance, I think, that a very high level of need that exists in the community with maybe some fairness for folks who are developing here. And so my request for you all to consider is to pursue the 80% AMI at 100% mitigation based on the full community's market prices. So not just unincorporated Pickens County. And I would say that, the principles that I'm thinking of, like, how do I make a decision related to this is, should development pay its full way or not? And it's hard for me to justify, particularly in the market right now, why we wouldn't pursue that. As well as, let's serve the AMIs, the families, AMIs represent families. So let's serve the families who have need, and which we have demonstrated need now and in the future in the community. And also, all of our markets are connected. So I can't justify why we would divide out unincorporated Pickens County from the broader market when they're connected, when someone goes to purchase a home in our region. So that's kind of my pitch. That's my hope that the board decides today, and the reasons why you might support that.
So Kelly, can I ask for a point of clarification on the proposed at 80% chart that John Ely provided? You're looking at the final column, the proposed new current fee and 100% fee subsidy mitigation of all sizes of development? Is that the column you're looking at? Okay. Just for clarification. Okay. Thank you. Francie?
So I completely agree with you, Kelly, and I think that in our society, we have found every way we possibly can to protect the wealthy and keep them from taking care of the people around them. And I think this is one avenue that we have to, since we're probably not going to tax wealth, which would be an interesting approach to the world. this is one avenue we have for holding people responsible for the communities in which they live. So I completely support your recommendation.
Oh, thanks. And I would jump in. I mean, just a reminder, this is our only game. This is Pickens County's like only revenue for housing.
Yeah.
You know, so I keep that in mind when we think about the huge goal that we're trying to chip away at. So thanks.
Okay, and I have a question about that chart, because if you look at it compared to the variable levels of fee, which is the second column over, the people who are getting hit the least, that the fee doesn't change for the 15,000, it's $210,404. That's locally occupied. That stays the same, but it goes from 35,125 for 57.5 locally occupied to 58,541, and then the next jump is for the 8,500 locally occupied versus non-locally, and so I'm seeing the bigger hit not going to the 15,000. See, these numbers are the same. So I'm wondering, why isn't the 15,000 square foot home under the proposed new current fee at 100% fee subsidy mitigation, why isn't that number increased?
Good question.
Locally occupied, it stays at 210,000, everybody else goes up.
Well, it's the whole row.
Well, the non-locally stays the same. That's what you're saying.
The locally goes down.
Let's get it back up so I can make sure I understand what you're asking, Patty.
Okay.
So you're looking at this chart?
Wait,
80%.
yes.
It's really hard to see up there.
Okay. And which of, are you looking at this?
Yeah, I'm looking at that, comparing it to the proposed new current fee of variable levels, the second group over. See how,
Here?
yeah.
Right.
If you go all the way down,
So-
the 15,000 square foot stays at 210,404 across, see? Why didn't that go up for locally occupied?
This column here is non-locally occupied, which
Right.
is already 100%, so it should
Which
match
column
this
is he
one,
pointing
which it
to?
does.
It does.
This one here is already 100%
Oh, that's
this
why.
size.
All right,
Right here, 11,001 to 15,000 is already at 100%.
okay,
so that's
I got it,
insane.
I got it. That explained it all. I just didn't see that, because that's in the 11,000 1 foot to 15,000 at 100%. Okay,
Right. Well,
that clarified it.
there's
Thank
all
you.
the data in these charts, so sorry about that.
Thanks, John. No, I just missed that. All right, any other board members wishing to chime in here?
When will we see this again?
When will we see this again? That sounds like a song.
When will I see
I-
you again?
I have a comment, and that is that, and this is mostly just opinion, but it just seems like the locally occupied person who's building a 15,000 square foot house is getting a really good deal. And I guess that just kind of bothers me because, yeah, so if it's not locally occupied, that's, you know, not as good a situation as if it's locally occupied. But the size of the discrepancy is pretty extreme, and the size of the house is the same. So a 15,000 square foot house, whether it's lived in by somebody who says they lived here or not, it just seems like a really good deal for somebody local to be building
Well,
that big a house. And
I suppose, but in keeping with the formula approach to the calculation of the fee, the data that we have generated based upon surveys of occupancy habits and actual employment, the locally occupied structure, regardless of size, will employ less people as an equally sized structure that is non-locally occupied. I mean, dramatically different. So I suppose it's a good deal, but on the other hand, our data does not indicate a larger number of employees being generated commensurate with that size. That's why in constructing this memo, I put in these sort of example impact fees for residential size structures and not commercial ones or tourist accommodation structures, simply because the residential structure is a complicated beast to equate the fee to its actual ownership and use and size. It's not a straight line progression, it's a logarithmic one. The data that we have, and actually one of the limitations in the fee collection is there are a few houses out there or a few properties out there that still have the ability to exceed 15,000 square feet based upon older approvals that are still vested. And our data stops at 15,000, and we can't really extrapolate beyond that because we don't know if the extrapolation would be a straight line or some logarithmic variation of the straight line. And so, 17,000 is the same impact as 15,000 because of an absence of data. The employee generation is what it is. So we're not looking to create a windfall here for the county or an ability to backfill against the previously existing need. We're looking to tread water. The law allows us to exact money from property owners developing property based upon their impact, or in this case, their employee generation. So we can't exceed that under the law. So that's where we are.
And does the Aspen municipality do a similar thing?
Aspen and APSHA and the county all together were pursuing this methodology. And it was before the recession, so probably 2007, the city decided to pull out, and then APSHA was no longer positioned to move forward, so that left us to take up this particular methodology. The city has not revised theirs, although I hear rumblings of a discussion to do so. They have not yet changed their methodology from more of a construction cost approach, which, as I said before, was our approach. But the difficulty with that is there are so many variables that have to be evaluated periodically to make the fee relevant. It really just overcomes the government trying to calculate that change. Having this set of variables allows us to change this fee and implement the change automatically every year when new HUD data is generated.
And is so there is an impact fee in Aspen. They're not exempt from an impact fee if you build at Aspen. You still pay an impact fee, it just has a different basis. Okay.
Very good. That was very good. All right, Steve, please.
So looking at this chart, I mean, I can see your logic, Kelly, and I could accept that. I doubt if there would be anybody paying the $1 million because they would find a way around that. And I guess it falls on the definition of locally occupied. Locally occupied by whom? Somebody building a 15,000 square foot house they could just give the housing to some local family to live in it for a year after the house is built, and they could say it's locally occupied. And I guess, does the land use code have definitions of who would be the occupant if it's defined as locally occupied? Or it would be worth the families to save $800,000. It'd be worth their while to move to Aspen for a year and live in their house for the first year, and then move back wherever to their second or third home elsewhere, just to save that much money. So I doubt if anybody's going to pay the $1 million. They'll find a way to pay the $210,000.
Well, Steve, there certainly was a bit of suspected gaming of the fee calculation in the declaration of residence. Once that declaration is made for the reduced fee, a covenant has been recorded against the property that states it must be occupied by an owner whose legal residence is Pitkin County. That doesn't mean that person can't travel, but it does definitely limit how that property is sold and how it is occupied. With the cost of housing going up so dramatically everywhere, let alone our area, I would imagine that there's more incentive for that to occur, and we'll just have to police the fee collection and the occupancy of the structures better.
What would that policing look like?
Yeah, and we need to verify, do they have to be locally driver's licensed, local voter registration? Because you know, a lot of families, one votes here and one votes in New York or wherever else. So, yeah, I think that's further discussion and how we can ensure that that doesn't get gamed. Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Steve, and I would say, you know, our program still allows for someone to have an alternative course for paying the impact fee. Like they could buy down a unit, you know, so maybe they go and buy down a Hunter Creek unit, which will be less than the $1 million. And I actually don't think that's a bad incentive. I think that's a pretty great incentive because then the housing is immediately delivered, rather than putting into a fund that then we have to expend to achieve that housing.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for clarifying that again, Kelly. Greg, did you?
I'd just be interested in knowing how many houses does this affect? How many large houses are in ComDev right now? What are we looking at for the number of, you know, over 10,000 or over 15,000 square foot houses in the county?
Or even over 557.
There are a few. I don't have the building permit data with me, Greg.
And when you say a few, do you mean several or a few? Because I don't think there's several. Like
Oh,
maybe
is that 7 or 25?
under 20, under 15.
Probably not 25.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is, I wonder how many houses this really applies to. I know it's an issue. It's important. I'm glad we're doing it. But I also wonder, really, are we going to see an impact? Are we going to see any real effective impact, or is this, you know, I'm worried it's symbolic in some ways, but I'm still supportive.
So, John, let me clarify too. When is the fee paid? At CO?
A building permit application.
Okay, so, so those who are not at that point yet, they may get caught in this switch if we decide to change this.
It would be nice if we could, if this isn't a disincentive to building really big houses, it would be nice to be able to measure that as well.
Whether or not it is a disincentive?
Yeah.
So they go in to get their building permit, and
I
the
don't
guy
know.
says, okay, where's your check for $1 million? You just, oh wait, we're gonna change
I'm
it.
gonna do 14.
I'm gonna whack off half my house. All right.
So I can say between March and May, we had, it looks like 7 new residential permits that were issued. I do not have the square footage, but I am showing that the new residence permit valuations in 2021 are much higher than 2019 and 2020, and that's probably reflective of a combination of size and inflation. And so it's likely that this would, at least had it been in place these last 3 months, have made a difference.
Could we
So
get
that's
that
like
information?
Almost 30 a year.
Let's get that information and see.
I think you could also look at it one way, is that there's been some anticipation that we were going to be contemplating and doing this. So we're seeing people moving where perhaps they wouldn't have moved before, in terms of putting the application in, or, you know, moving on, developing their
moving
property.
faster. I thought there was anticipation that we were gonna change the maximum allowable square footage. I thought that's what the anticipation was about.
Yeah, there's concern about all that.
Okay, let's bring it back to here. I think, Greg, you also asked, when will we see this again?
Yes.
Before it comes to us informal, John, or will you bring it informally?
I don't have any reason for another work session unless you guys do.
Okay. Does the board feel that we need to have more information before we can give direction to John Ely to draft it's an ordinance or reso? Ordinance? Change to the land use code.
Ordinance.
Okay.
That's right.
So just to clarify, John, John Ely, on the residency, the locally occupied. So it doesn't mean renting it to a local person. It means that the owner is actually living there for 6 months of the year, the residency requirement.
Right. Actually, a legal residency does not require a particular time. It simply is a manifestation of a place of domicile, which can be through voter registration. It can be through, adduced or exhibited through other indicia as well. So, it's incumbent for them to show that they are locally occupied, or they are local residents that are occupying the structure.
And if that occupancy changes, then they're responsible, like they sell it to
Right.
somebody, then that person buying is responsible for paying the difference in fees.
I thought we did have a legal metric
we did-
for residency, though, of 6 months. Was that part of COVID, or what was
It's
that?
voter registration, I think.
Voter registration is less than a month these days.
Yeah, that's right.
But
that's true.
that could
It's
be
30
any number
days.
of things, though, granted from another discussion. But what was your question, Patty?
Mine was if, how quickly you forget me, John. Mine was, if it changes, like I have my house, I live in it, I pay X fee, and then I sell it to somebody who's not gonna live it, then they have to pay X, they have to pay the difference, correct?
Yeah, exactly right. The county, pursuant to the code that was
The covenant.
previously enacted, is willing to vacate the covenant, provided that the balance of the fee be paid. And the balance of the fee would be calculated at the time the covenant is released, which, is not the same as the year that the structure was permitted, for example.
Okay. Kelly?
All right, so.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Kelly has some more.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump off. It sounds like there's support for my preferred direction. I really appreciate that. I also just wanna say, as conditions change, we can revisit this. If there's, if we think there's a recession and this is something that affects our construction industry that we wanna further support, we can revisit this. So, I don't think now we need to kind of not go full bore, because I think that the fees will be paid. I think we're in a better position to deliver housing if we can max that out, but we can revisit this should our economic situation change in the community.
Okay, well, Kelly, I have you and Francie in support, but Steve has a spider crawling up his chest, and I'm not sure where Greg and Steve stand on this.
Well, that's
I
from your
said I'd
basket.
support it.
Oh, so there's the three. I am wavering between column 2 and the 4th column, so I'm kind of caught there, but I'll have to see where I stand at the end of the day. I think we need to do something more, increase it to help alleviate our shortage of affordable employee housing. So I'm kind of caught in between, but I'm heading in the right direction, Kelly. I'm just not quite sure I'm all the way there yet. Greg is there, so we have direction of 3 to have John, and Steve, where do you and your spider stand?
I just wanted to show that to Kelly to give her a preview of what she has to look forward to. John, you did say this would be going to the P&Z before it would come back to us as
Yes.
an ordinance. Is that right? Okay, so the P&Z might recommend changes to it before it gets to us anyhow.
Right.
Potentially.
I'd kind of like to see both of these going to P&Z, but we'll see.
Yeah, so I would forward
This column and that column.
I'd be in favor of forwarding that, this as our recommendation, and see what the P&Z says on it.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off and.
Drive safely.
I've got to keep all, so thanks so much.
Okay, drive safely, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, John Ely, you have direction, sir?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm glad you said you did, because I don't know where we'd go from here. So, would the board like to take a 10-minute break? It's now 3:10.
Yes, I would.
So we're gonna take 10, and then we'll come back to future agendas, and then open discussion, and then board committee appointment information. Okay?
Yeah.
10 minutes. Thank you.
I still have a problem with the discrepancy between the locally.
Welcome back. This is a continuation of the Board of County Commissioners work sessions on Tuesday, June 15th. We are at a very exciting portion of our agenda, which is a review of future agenda calendars. Mr. Peacock, do you have any issues before you or us?
So there are just a couple quick things. The Healthy Rivers and Streams Board would like to do a proclamation on July 14th, proclaiming July as the month of the RISD, the Recreational In-Stream Diversion. And we wanted to do a check-in with the board. That is effort that is really led through our attorney's office to get the recreational in-stream diversions. We've of course developed one down in Basalt at this point. I don't have a lot more detail.
Do you know why they're picking July? Was that the year, was that the month we got it?
I think that's when we opened the park.
That would just be nice to know.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem celebrating.
RISD month? RISD day?
I think the
week.
public
I
will
think
have
it's
no.
only a week.
That's a week.
Yeah.
I think the public will have no clue, so it should be interesting to see what it generation.
First thing is, I think we're the only, that's the only RISD we have in our watershed. And there may be very, very few in
They
the
have a
state.
RISD at the Glenwood Water Park, I think.
Do they get one? Because I was under the impression that
They have one in
when,
the Eagle River somewhere.
I think ours was like the last one in through, and then they tried to slam the door, and I don't know what's happened since. That's an Ely question.
So I think we can ask Lisa for that information when she drafts the proclamation, correct?
I would encourage them to come up with a name that actually is more interesting.
Then RISD?
Well,
Than the real
who's
name.
going to go out to celebrate that? I mean, seriously, let's celebrate the river or the water park or wetlands.
Bureaucrats celebrate acronyms like
Yeah.
that.
Yes, indeed they do.
Let's just have a
Every day.
single acronym day every year.
Let's do, yeah, and we'll pick one out of a hat. Which acronym do you want to do? We were just talking about acronyms out there. Okay, so John, you will follow up on that for us?
Yeah, we'll follow up on that. And then just another Healthy Rivers and Streams one. We did originally have an item around the position scheduled today. That's been rescheduled for July 6th.
Okay,
That's all
because I know
have for
Kelly
future.
wanted to be part of that discussion. Does anybody else have issues before I get to mine?
Can't think of any.
Okay, I'll let you work on it. Rancy? I like having people in the room, so this is great, so thank you guys for being here.
I have no issues.
Okay, Steve Child, do you have any issues you'd like to bring for future agendas? You're good, or you have an issue?
Yes, no, there's one issue. I noticed that the Capitol Creek Ranch second reading on the, let's see, it has to do with the conservation easement, is listed on June 23rd and July 14th. And I don't believe it needs to be, one of those should be removed.
Okay,
So
John,
then it will make a more accurate look at what the, how busy the agenda will be on those days.
so let's just double check with staff to make sure. I know we continued it first reading to second reading on the 23rd, but maybe staff knows something they're not
So
telling us.
maybe it should say, one of them maybe is just mislabeled. It says second reading, maybe it should say first reading continued or something.
Yeah, I don't think we continued it, but I think we moved it to second reading, so let's just verify which day staff wants to put it on, by the record. Bless you. All right, Steve, thank you. I have two quick things. On the work session on the 22nd, it's my understanding we're still gonna have the Home Rule Charter Amendment discussion, because Jeanette has brought some issues forward, correct?
Yeah, so
Without that one issue being on board.
there were some additional issues. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that, and then on the 23rd, we have on our land use, we have the ordinance about the easement for Lazy Glen Homeowners Association, but we continued one of the items, and we moved the other item to second reading. One of them was only a one read, and that was for the permit and the plan and it's not on here. There's only one Lazy Glen item. There should be two. One was a continued, because we had to do them at the same time. Remember, we couldn't pass one without the other.
No, I remember that.
So we need to have Lazy Glen on there twice. Okay.
I just have a quick update, and that is that when I first joined the stakeholders advisory group for wolf reintroduction, they had scheduled the meetings for times that we thought were gonna be a complication for our meetings. They're having them now on Fridays, so there's no conflict.
Perfect. Because we were gonna try and tell them they could only do when I had ACRA meetings.
Yeah, exactly. Now, well, at least the first one's Friday, so I'm assuming the others are gonna be Fridays. And
Well, let us know. We'll see what we can do to accommodate that. I think it's great you're gonna participate. All right. Seeing no more agenda item issues, let's go to open discussion, and I thought we were gonna discuss the fire ban, the fire stage, but we've already done that.
We have already done that. Can't tell if Kara was able to join.
Oh, about the two letters?
Mm-hmm.
We had two letters, one from Aspen Chamber Resort Association and one from, what was,
Oh, there was the one about Joey objecting to the fire.
no, this was.
Camera stuff.
No, these are letters of support for grants.
Yeah, so There's two letters. There's one for Accra and one for Carbondale
It's
Tourism.
Carbondale Tourism.
They are around the same grant. It's Colorado Tourism Office Restart
Oh, yeah.
Destinations Grant. So both Accra and Carbondale are submitting for those grants, have requested letters of support. Those were sent to you yesterday, so hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at them on short notice here. But these are similar to the Roadmap to Recovery grants that we applied for with DOLA, except these are really focused on, I believe they're really focused on destinations, rural resort kind of communities and marketing, and so that's why the chambers are taking these up, and both chambers asked us for a letter of support. Staff would recommend providing the letter of support, and I do believe those have to go in this week. I don't have the due date right now.
Yeah, I read them both, and I'm comfortable supporting both and moving it forward.
Carbondale and which else?
Aspen Chamber Resort Association.
Too bad Redstone didn't apply for that.
They probably could have. Are they official though? As a they are.
I don't know.
They're a nonprofit.
So they may or may
as
not
a
qualify.
community
They're chamber.
association.
Oh, the community
But they're not.
association, yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
they're a chamber per se.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what the qualifications
Yeah.
for that grant were.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable, and I don't know if Kelly can sign or if because it's Kelly's name's on the letter, but you can use electronic signature, I'm sure, if need be, if
Yeah,
that's okay
or
with the
we
board.
can change
Steve,
it.
is that okay with you?
I'm fine with it.
You're good, okay.
Okay, that's all I've got for you.
Any other open discussion?
Yeah, I thought I'd
Yeah.
catch you up on the Thomasville caucus meeting last night, which I went to, and which is where I got those amazing pictures. It was really.
Shoot, I would've gone up there with you if I'd known.
It was really interesting. Kevin was there and Warner, and he gave a really interesting presentation, and he also was under the fire a little bit about the timber permits that are upcoming. And he explained, the different reasons that we have national forests, and that one of them is to be able to provide timber. And the guy just got hotter, but he handled it beautifully, of course. And and I introduced myself and talked a little bit about what we're working on these days as commissioners. And then Peter from the CPW talked, and he was up there for quite a while. And you guys might have noticed that up the frying pan, and I think I've seen in a couple of other places, some of the trees are the needles are turning red, not unlike with the pine beetle before. Well, that is a Douglas fir beetle, and we don't have wide expanses of Douglas fir. So this infestation will stay fairly in small little pockets here and there, and it's part of the natural evolution of the Douglas fir, and Kevin didn't think it was a huge issue. And the same guy who was upset about the timber harvest was saying that the Forest Service had said that the pine beetles were going to come raging west, and they were going to take out all the beetles in the west, and that didn't happen. And so Kevin spoke to that, and it is the case that there are pine beetles around. They're around all the time, but they are not. It's not an epidemic like it was before, and they are pretty much subdued right now. And he says it doesn't mean they won't come back, but I'd heard that a couple of years ago that it was pretty much over, and he definitely confirmed that. But one of the things that came up is that next door to the fire station where the meeting was in Thomasville, there's a mobile home park, and they're in the and I wanted to ask you guys about this. In the master plan for Thomasville, it says no new mobile home locations, no new mobile homes, and as one gets retired, they can't replace it and they can't build that's in their master plan. And so this guy is just going ahead and doing it anyway, and he's adding 9 new sites, I believe it is. And it doesn't require a new septic, but it definitely requires more septic. And the people in the town are quite afraid of this man, and he brandishes guns, and And so they're afraid to confront him. I mean, they really are afraid to confront him, and they don't want to. And they asked me who can deal with this. And I said, well, I'm sure ComDev would be interested to hear about it. And they said that they've talked to Cindy several times, and I'm going to call Cindy. And that apparently you don't need a permit to open up new RV sites and extend your sewer system. It's just
No,
what they said.
yeah.
It's just what they said. So I'm going to call Cindy. But I just wanted to let you know, and I talked to the woman again today on my way to lunch. And I talked to Joey a little bit, and he says this has been a problem. This person has been a problem, and for a long time, and they're aware of it, the sheriff's department. But for us, what my question is so their master plan has this, and I was clear. I said, well, Pickton County is not getting rid of all their mobile home parks. And they said, well, it's in our master plan. And so I said, well, how many of you were involved in the writing of the master plan? And about half the people raised their hand. So, and there were about 30, 32 people, something, maybe 35 people there. So what happens if there's somebody in one of these caucus areas with a master plan? Who's responsible for enforcing that master plan?
Well, let me just add, John, really quick. Master plans are recommending,
right,
documents.
To us.
Unless they're codified, they're not law, quote unquote.
Right.
So they could say, we don't want any more, but if we didn't codify that into the land use code, then it's just a recommendation. Yeah. But you cannot add on, spaces, and you cannot change your septic without going through permitting and approval process. Unless he already had prior.
Right.
Some years
And
back,
so-
and we don't know that.
And that's something that we can look at with Cindy as far as, what were the approvals up there and what's been built. But I was gonna say the same thing, the caucus master plans are advisory documents unless the board is adopting code, basically.
So there's no jurisdiction to enforce anything in their master plan? Okay.
Unless it's codified.
Unless you have
Like
adopted
house
the
size
code.
up in their master plan has been codified.
Mm-hmm.
But the other, I don't remember that coming through to codify. No, it could have, but the house size was the bigger issue for all
What
the
is the
master
house size
plans.
up there?
They had 4,000, I think. They had something different.
Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head.
I wanna say
The-
4,000.
Well,
but
I'll tell you
Yeah.
the guy's name after the meeting. I don't want.
Okay.
I think we know who it is. We've dealt with him. But, and if we send anybody up there from ComDev, to discuss this with this gentleman, they probably go with an escort.
Well, I've heard that's what has happened in the past.
And I don't mean.
No,
escorting. I'm done with that.
No, they're very clear. When they've come before, they've come.
All right.
before.
Thank you. And,
Sheriff,
yeah, I
probably.
need to get on, I need to start following when some of these caucus meetings are.
And,
'cause I-
and there was one other question at the meeting, and it was about, I reminded myself on the way in several times.
The speed limit sign.
There's that, and then there was the, all right, I'll try to remember.
We got them there,
Did the
speed
food
limit sign.
bank or the food distributions thing come up at all?
No, not while I was
'Cause I
there.
know they're
But
talking
Kevin
about
and Peter and I
establishing
didn't
Up
stay
there?
till the end of the meeting. We just sort of did our little things and then we left. But, I mean, they told us we didn't have to stay. But.
Broadband,
Did you
maybe?
stay for
I know
barbecue?
they're-
Yeah, oh yeah, it was broadband. It was the towers.
Good job.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mhm.
And it was whether or not the towers are in fact going to be fixed and operating this summer. And Kevin spoke to it because he knew more about it than I did. And he said we did in fact give the approval, because I guess it had to go through the Forest Service, so he knew more. But I said I would pursue it a little more, so I should have asked Jeff, but that was a different
Yeah,
agenda.
it's at the
so.
far side of Rudai Reservoir up on the hill there. We've seen the view plane.
Yeah, and that is in our work plan. I'll double check with Jeff that those are getting done this summer, but we are waiting on the permit and we
You're
know
waiting on
those
the
were-
permit?
Mhm.
From whom?
Forest Service. So I
Oh, well, they
understand
just
those have
passed it,
been-
so,
yeah.
okay, good.
Some
Okay.
of those home sites are not in range though. They're still out of sight.
Oh,
around
I'm
the
sure.
corner.
Right.
I'm sure. It's
So
the
It's a
same with the
tough-
They're
Crystal.
not all gonna be happy.
But maybe the new trailer lots are inside, so
Maybe
we
so,
can go.
right.
So would you just shoot me an email when you
Yeah.
find out? Thank you.
The Food Distribution Network is talking about doing food distribution up there, and they were thinking about Thomasville or maybe the Diamond J or something. I
There it
introduced
is, or
them to
whatever.
Diamond J people. Were any of the Diamond J people there at that?
I mean, like, as in.
You know,
Ruben
the people who,
Be good
Bayou.
Kevin
Bayou.
told me that these 4 kids who were there, I mean, they look like kids to me, they were adults, but, were associated with the purchase of the,
Bayou
yes.
retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
okay.
retreat.
Is that the guy who came to us and wanted to have
Yeah,
a liquor
Ruben
license and stuff?
Ruben Sadowski.
Well, the 4 people that were there were not that guy.
Okay.
With that, I
Somebody
don't,
else. He's
they
got,
were,
there's a bunch of them.
they were looked more like hippies. And that guy who came to us didn't, he looked like
Yeah,
a.
he runs with that crowd.
Yeah, well, okay, so anyway, yeah, they were there. And there was discussion about whether or not you can remove and relocate pine martens from your property. That was one of the things that came up. And the guy I was sitting
Just
next
try.
to and I are looking at each other like, I don't know what a pine marten is.
You don't wanna mess with the pine.
Yeah,
marten.
yeah, I've heard they're kind of like between a weasel and a badger or something.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that would probably be an attraction. We could do Pine Marten Removal Day up there.
So those guys from the Diamond J or whatever it's called wanted the pine marten from the guy who wanted to get rid of it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's an attraction.
It was quite.
Oh, I love
quite
it.
a
I wish
fun
I'd
group
been
of
there. I
people.
They could have a
needed
festival.
that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. What?
Yeah.
They could have a Pine Marten festival.
It was really cool to go to this meeting because it reminded me why I wanted to be a commissioner, was like listening to people talk about what's going on in their lives and what their issues are. We've had only television screens, you know, so it was really great to go. and see
Sometimes
these
it's
people.
hard to conceal the look on your face at those meetings.
Well, I sat in the back row.
Oh, good girl. Okay, anything else, Francie, for open discussion?
Let's see.
Steve's got a hand, so
He wants a Pine Marten.
can I let,
To tag on to the pine marten issue, the miners used to keep pine martens for pets back in the day,
Wow.
occasionally.
they were desperate.
They are good, I think they're good to have around.
Yeah, well, the guy from the
They're
Diamond
better
J,
than bushy-tailed wood rats.
the guy from the Diamond
So
J
I
said
just
when they're
wanted
not
to-
Wait,
ferocious, they're
Steve,
adorable.
okay,
Sorry,
wait,
sorry.
you both are talking, so.
I was just
Francie,
responding to what you said.
Francie had something more for open discussion?
Yeah, but he can finish what he's doing.
Okay, Steve, you can go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to let you know that, last Thursday, I attended the Holy Cross Energy annual meeting.
Oh, great.
It was at the Gianetti's Ranch in Carbondale, the Spring Creek Ranch, which I had never been down to their ranch, which they use. It's in a beautiful spot. They have a venue for weddings and events there. The part of the meeting, they announced the winners of the election, which Robert Gardner and Kristen Bertulia were both reelected.
That's good to know.
And then someone named Keith was the third person
Oh,
from the
really?
Vale area. I
Cluster.
can't remember his last name, was elected.
The bunny guy.
They
Another
also talked a lot about the rolling out of the 100 by 30 campaign, which Holy Cross Energy has the goal of 100% renewable electricity by the year 2030. And they feel very confident that they will achieve that probably before the year 2030. So everybody was excited about that. They did a wonderful presentation on their different goals and areas of, what they're working on as a corporate and cooperative company. One of their employees has been up in Coal Basin doing some preliminary looking at capturing the methane escaping from the coal mines up there, and they're very excited about trying to do something on that project. But he described a hole in the snow. They were up there. There was a hole in the snow about this big coming out of the ground from the air, the methane coming out of the ground in one spot and actually melting the snow right there in that one spot where it was coming out of the ground. So I think that to him that was encouraging that there is, like a specific location that they could capture the methane and hopefully generate electricity from it. I talked with him about the power line that runs up there in Coal Basin is a 3-phase line that goes to the building that Mid-Continent had there about halfway up the valley. And that line would have to be refurbished some, but if they generate electricity up there, they would want to pipe the gas down to that location of that building and then generate the electricity, and then it would go down the three-phase line to Redstone from there. So it was a very good meeting. They were very appreciative that I was there as an elected official. I was the only elected official there. There were no other county commissioners from any county, and it didn't make sense for town council people to be there from Carbondale or Aspen or something, because they're not members of Holy Cross Energy. But anyhow, I was glad I went, just to represent the, to be there representing the county, kind of. And I'm really glad I went.
Me too, because I forgot.
Yeah,
I had it on my calendar and I forgot.
Okay, anything else, Steve? Francie?
Yeah, I spoke to Larry Sandoval after talking with Greg yesterday. He's at the BLM about the methane and what kind of permits or whatever Pitkin County might need to get involved with that, and he didn't know anything about it. So he was going to look into it and get back to us. So I don't know whether Holy Cross has not been talking to the BLM about that, but he didn't seem to know about it. Did you find out?
Is Coal Basin BLM? Are we talking Coal Basin capture of methane?
BLM, they have purview up there. What's happening is CORE has been developing this. I think Holy Cross was invited to come. A guy who proposed this to CORE is a School of Mines professor and a physicist who has a project going over in Paonia as well. And he's been exploring it with his methane capture device, meter, and walking the ground. The first phase was to walk around and see if they could find these concentration areas. Second phase would be to fly it and with more and more complicated equipment to really locate and then try to determine if there is methane that could be captured or flared. More realistically, they're thinking it might be just flaring it would be better. But ideally, we could capture it and make electricity. That would be just fantastic.
I would hate to think about flaring anything in the middle of the wildfire season.
Well, I know that's the problem. Yeah, I
No
know.
kidding.
Well, that's another issue. But they do have ways of dealing with that. But the thing is, the Corps is kind of running this and putting it aside. Applied for the grant we applied for last week, and the next meeting of this group, they were going to determine how to bring in Larry. So
great.
We'll be reaching out to him, but we wanted to have a meeting of the players involved in it before.
It sounds like Holy Cross too.
And Holy Cross and RAFTA and us and
Is any of that that might be an issue on private property up in there?
It's possible it could be. The neighbors up there. Katana and.
So there might be lots of parties involved.
Yeah. So anyway, it's totally exploratory and highly speculative, but it could be an incredible pilot project, and it's great that that Holy Cross is there. I'm really excited that they're all interested.
We brought the ski company in on the one
in Somerset.
Yeah. Because I was
they're
chairman of
up
CORE
there
during
also,
that time
yeah.
with Randy Udall and Okay. So moving us along.
I had one more open discussion.
You certainly may have the floor.
No, I just wanted to tell you about a couple of things that we did at the CCI conference. Do you want me to tell it at the CCI?
You can tell it at your,
Okay, great.
So John, are you good? I'm gonna move to board reports. Kelly said she's ceding her time. I will do mine really quickly. ACRA, we have a meeting coming up the end of the month. ACRA's been, of course, very involved in looking at planning events. I'm gonna try and remind ACRA that there's concerns about the community on how much we want to advertise coming to Aspen right now since we're already busy. I know that that's ACRA's job, but I think that's important to take into consideration when we're creating an environment that doesn't offer the best experience to people, because we just have too many people, in our community, and it's already gearing up.
I support
Economic Development District, which is pretty cool. We're working on their master plan. It has to be upgraded every 5 years. I've got Cindy Hubin and Ellen Cesano helping me out. We have a special meeting next Thursday to review information to move forward with the revision of this plan. And then Northwest COG is not meeting until July. Oh, the mountain migration study should be released next week, hopefully, John. Ellen's been really involved in that. They're planning a kind of like a release, and it should be, you'll be able to zoom in. As soon as I get that information, I'll pass it on. Ellen was supposed to contact me. So they were gonna try and go to every jurisdiction, which wasn't gonna work, and then they went, oh, let's just do a Zoom meeting and we'll record it so people who can't attend can also access, which is a great idea. So I'll let you know when I hear more about that, and I'll send a heads up to John Stavney at Northwest COG that we wanna make sure we are aware of that timing. So that's next. The other, Basalt Vista, I'm still waiting for them to have enough people living in those great units down there so they can create their own homeowners board. Because now I'm involved with satellite dishes on roofs, boxwoods in front of their house, which kind of fencing material, which was not kind of my plan, but I'm still participating in their HOA issues. And then the TPR, I haven't heard anything more from Dave and Brian. There's a meeting coming up, but it's the same date as one of our regular meetings. So David and Brian and I are gonna kind of talk about it, especially with transportation funds, hopefully, which will be huge for the TPRs to actually have money to worry about spending. And so we need to look at getting any shovel-ready projects and get those plans on the shelf so we're ready to go if we wanna start pulling in some of those dollars. So that's about where we stand on that. So Steve Child, you're next with your issues. And Francie, if you want to tag on to Steve when he talks about CCI, I'll give you that opportunity during Steve's. Thank you. You caught yourself, Steve.
Well, I am muted. So CCI, we had the meeting last week over in Vail. Francie and I were there for the whole time, and Kelly went for the first day and a half and then came back here Wednesday for chairing the meeting here in person. Let's see, there were a couple of really interesting things. There was a really good presentation about short-term rentals, and I'll just touch on that briefly, but there was a presentation by a company called AirDNA, which is a data collection company that has worked a lot with Breckenridge, among other communities, gathering data so they know exactly how many units they have and the different effects of, helping them figure out what annual tax to charge for a unit based on how many bedrooms it is, what kind of administration fee different communities charge, that sort of a thing. They talked a lot about the issues involved around STRs, including, among others, parking issues, trash collection, noise, rental agents, who is the responsible agent when there is a problem, health and safety standards. There were pictures of septic systems failing because they were being so overused. And a discussion about penalties for violations of the standards for the short-term rentals.
Which have actually never been enforced.
Good presentation. Francie might have more to add to that.
I do.
Really
I
good
do have some numbers.
presentation by CDOT Aeronautics Division, which is where we get some money every year on our annual budget from the excise tax on the aviation fuel that we sell, that we get to keep a certain amount of that. And we also get, there's grant money from CDOT Aeronautics. One interesting thing that I learned that there is an airport, it's a Northern Colorado Regional Airport, as no air traffic control tower. It's a, it's a general aviation airport. They have over 100,000 operations per year with one runway at Northern Colorado Regional Airport without an air traffic control tower. I would be really curious how they manage doing that. And I'm sure they can take off. They probably take off and land in different directions. It's out in the plains, so they have more. They can take off and land from both ends of the runway.
And that's the one where Allegiant said, isn't that the one where Allegiant said they wouldn't fly in there anymore? Allegiant Airlines? It was that airport, right?
Yeah, I think
it was.
so, yeah. It must be just totally nuts with that many operations per year. CDOT Aeronautics is developing a Colorado remote tower project where they can have just using cameras and radar alongside the runway at an airport without an air traffic control tower, that the information can be sent electronically to another location, and somebody can actually control that airport from a remote location without actually being there. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And they also then told about the camera system, which there are tons of these cameras in Canada and Alaska. There were none in any of the continental United States until Colorado was able to get some of these, and I think they said they have 100, if I remember correctly, 100 of these cameras in various locations around Colorado now, just so pilots can see what the weather conditions are, kind of like the cameras along I-70 and stuff. You can see what the conditions are before you go there. And so this is like really, using technology to make flying safer here.
So Steve, can I ask a question? Did they film these sessions so somebody could come back and watch them at a later date?
I don't know.
Or maybe we can find out, because John, we wanted maybe Rich or somebody from the airport to listen in on this one session, especially funding. So if nobody did, maybe we can find out how they can, possibly? Okay, because I think it'd be worthwhile for somebody from the airport to follow up.
I think they are recorded, and also we can get the PowerPoint projection, the packets from that is available. It would be well worthwhile us, looking at both the housing and the airport one. Just real quickly on the CCI, the Mountain District meeting. We have a new chairman of that, Merritt Leakey, retired. He's been doing that for a lot of years as a chairman. So Blaine McFall from Fremont County is the new chairman, and Elizabeth Lawrence from Summit County is the new vice chair. About the CCI districts, Commissioner Ben Tisdale from Ouray County came up with a proposal, which he didn't really explain the proposal very well, about changing the boundaries of the different districts, because some of them have a lot more counties in them than others. And so this will be for future discussion at CCI about how the different districts are formulated. Ouray County and San Miguel County and I think La Plata County are in the Western District, and I think they feel kind of, they're liberal, progressive counties in a very conservative CCI district, and I think they would rather redraw the lines in some fashion or another. So that will be for future discussion, but just to know that, we might be redrawing the districts at CCI. And Francie, I'll give you an opportunity to jump in on CCI, and then I'll finish up on my others.
Okay. So a couple of interesting things at the aeronautics meeting that we went to is CDOT has 3,500 employees, and 8 of them are in aeronautics. That was pretty shocking. Like they're in charge of all the aeronautics and there's only 8 employees. And there's 76 airports in Colorado, and 2/3 of them don't have a full-time airport manager, and only 9 of them have air traffic control towers. So and 14 have commercial service. I thought that was quite a few, actually, considering.
So how many does that leave without a control tower with commercial service?
69, 66, 67. something
That
like
have
that.
commercial service and no tower? I
No,
didn't
no,
commercial-
no, that leaves 5.
I didn't think you could have commercial
I don't
service
know,
without a
that's-
tower. I guess you can. So
I know.
that means we don't need a tower.
Well, that one that Allegiant used to fly into, that Steve was talking about, they used to fly into there, and they didn't have
Yeah, that's
a tower.
interesting.
And one thing that was really interesting, I thought that he said, was that it's going to cost $1.08 billion to upgrade the airports in Colorado. That's what Colorado needs to upgrade their airports.
We take half, that leaves half for the rest of them.
No, DIA takes half, takes
They're already-
90%.
They should be done by now.
And just about the commitment to getting rid of lead, and he talked about fixed wing aircraft, won't be able to be, they have some aircraft that are coming in that are solar and stuff, but not fixed wing. But this guy was saying that the next movement forward for fixed wing aircraft is biofuels. And he sees that coming pretty fast.
Which we already have at our airport.
Yeah, which means that we grow fuel instead of food. And then I wanted to say a couple of things about the STRs. There were some really interesting statistics there. 10 million units globally, and in Breckenridge alone, 43% of their tax revenues come from STRs.
Wow.
I know, I was really shocked. So their compliance administrators are paid for by the license tax, which is like $75 to $150. And let's see.
How do they get other revenues from short-term rentals? Other than
From short,
licensing?
they get, it is.
Do they have a lodging tax?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, I don't know if it's lodging tax or if it's just sales tax, or something like that. But that was a shocking number to me.
We collect on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Sales tax.
The ones that say that they're short-term rentals.
So that's already in place.
And the advice
Kind of.
was that everybody has to fill out an application. Everybody has to be licensed, and you need to keep the application incredibly simple, and then you need to follow up. Because they said when they sent out the first round of applications, I can't remember what she said exactly, but like half the people didn't even respond. And so there was quite a bit of follow-up that had to happen. And in Mount Crested Butte, which I guess is different than Crested Butte, they have a 2.9% excise tax on all STRs, and that goes directly into affordable housing, that money. And that's about that on that.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, this was interesting. All STRs in the state, in their sales tax license, all the ones that are registered, are less than 10% of them are locally owned. So that whole thing that Redstone brought to our attention, and Aspen too, about people coming in and just buying up houses and turning them into STRs, that's more than 90% of the STRs in the state.
That's shocking.
And there are 10,000 STRs in unincorporated Summit County. 10,000.
10,000 they know of.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you have any other CCI or Steve?
Let's see. I don't think so. This is the one from the district meeting, which we have spent quite a bit of time on wildfires, talking about that. And Merritt, the guy who's just retiring as the president of this mountain district, he's on the tech committee for the wolf introduction, which I thought.
Oh.
He said, well, I applied to be on the stakeholders advisory group, but I got the Dear John letter for that. And then they called me up and wanted me to be on the technical committee, and he has no idea why, but he is. So
Is he a wolf tech person?
I don't think so. I don't know.
He may be at the end of this. All right,
Yeah.
Steve, did you have more CCR, or do you want to move forward with your other?
Well, yeah, on to my other items. The Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee only meets 4 times a year, so there's nothing new on that. Vintage meeting, the Regional Advisory Council for the Vintage on Aging issues is actually tomorrow morning that I'll be attending that. That's 4 times a year and it's tomorrow morning. Up 20, the policy committee meetings are coming up in July. I'm going to try to attend them virtually because I will be sitting by the runway in McCarthy, Alaska, which has the best hot spot in McCarthy
Just
to
talking about
attend the Zoom meeting. My daughter is here right now and she has it all figured out. That's absolutely the best place to be.
We were just talking about that earlier, Steve, how we were going to find you in the wilds of Alaska.
The backdrops are going to be pretty astonishing. I will be showing you some glaciers and things up there. Senior Council gave a report on that, but yeah, we're working on the 8 domains of livability, trying to come up with priorities to recommend to Chad and his team for implementing. And we had at the retreat, there were all the new people we appointed to the Senior Council were all there. It was like 100% attendance at the retreat, and they really covered a lot of territory. I was proud they did. The board really spoke up. They all spoke up and participated. It was really a good meeting. I think it is maybe one of the best senior council boards that we've ever had put together at one time now. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Greg?
Okay, I'm going to be brief. CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action. Francie, if you know about these, I'm just going to run out the acronyms for anybody who doesn't.
I appreciate it.
We're engaged in 44 bills during the most recent legislative session, so it was very active. We had 130 testimonies, including 30 from non-CC4CA elected officials. We had 30 guest opinions and 38 news stories, some of which I think I participated in some, and not in this session, but in the last signing on or letters that we've all participated in. So I'm going to email this to you because there's way too much to share regarding CC4CA. Regarding CORE, we have a meeting on Thursday, and our next meeting, and one of the topics will be that coal basin, trying to move that forward. It's not taking up a lot of bandwidth for CORE because it's one of those projects that comes along that's not something you anticipate, and so it's not on the usual work plan, but Mona has the extra bandwidth to handle it. But we're also putting together, CORE is, a proposal for Pitkin County. They're going to be presenting to Pitkin County commissioners here in the next month or so. And I don't have the date here, but we're going to hear about it for their proposal for the REMP funds. Moving down the list, QQ, I haven't heard much from QQ lately. It's been a while, so I'm expecting a meeting soon. Board of Health, we have a special meeting now booked for the 24th of this month.
Did that go out? Because I didn't.
That went out to
just
to the Board of Health members, yeah.
Well, I should have gotten
You should have gotten it. Huh, maybe it hasn't yet. I just approved it, said fine.
Just went out,
Okay.
I just got it.
Minutes ago, okay. RAFTA had our meeting last week. We're back for RAFTA. We're at 100% capacity.
Just got it.
With masks on the buses. The buses are going well. I've been riding them and they're pretty busy. We're back in action. They're an indicator that things are happening. Getting ridership back will be interesting to see how long Dan Blankenship is anticipating a couple of years probably to get back to capacity for RAFTA, but my guess is the way everything's going, it's going to happen sooner. One interesting thing about RAFTA, and I'm really proud of this, is that 2 years ago, one of my very first meetings, a school teacher from Carbondale who teaches in Aspen, Jeff White, who's one of my favorite teachers for my kids, came and made this impassioned appeal to lower the rates for kids going from Carbondale, lower valleys up to Aspen to ski or whatever on the weekends, because he said a family of four, you know, if we all get on the bus, it's gonna cost us more than it would to drive, and we're gonna drive if it, you know, we're trying to save money. And so,
$20 each way.
after COVID, which shut everything down for a year, we didn't talk about it. Now it came back, and we have a tentative plan to lower the bus fare for people under the age of 16 or maybe 18 to $1. So from anywhere in the valley. So that should normalize behavior for young people to ride the bus and make it more affordable. And it looks like something we can do. So that's hot topic at RAFTA, and it's very exciting.
Was that just first reading that we did?
It just came to us last week.
Yeah, I know, I was there and I thought.
Yeah, so it hasn't happened yet, but it's,
So, oh, okay.
we're in discussions, and that's where things are going.
Can I ask
yeah.
that? You know, I had brought this up a while ago with George, and I don't know if it ever went anywhere. People who are disabled, who are not people who are officially by the federal government disabled, have to pay to ride the bus. And I thought that.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, when you're 65, you ride for free, but if you're permanently disabled and you're collecting disability benefits through the federal government, which is usually based on your Social Security when you're 65, but it's prior to that, you still pay to ride the bus.
Right. I don't know about that. I can bring that up.
Yeah.
The other piece of action on that you just reminded me is that we just got a new bus that's got a disabled ramp that's very cool, and it's like the latest, greatest way to create access for disabled people.
That we charge to ride the bus.
Yeah, but they've got to pay to come. I don't know.
Disabled
I don't know if they have to
people's
pay or
fares,
not. My guess is Dan would set us straight on that, because I don't honestly know.
Yeah.
But we can look into it. Regarding BLM, the only BLM I have is what Francie brought up earlier, is that we just made a very informal inquiry with Larry Sandoval regarding, you know, what would it take to get approval if we need it from BLM to go and look at, and it could be on a federal level. I think with the Obama administration, they had a rule that said you could get approval fairly quickly to go in and look for gas leaks, and it was rescinded with Trump, and now it's hopefully going to come back with Biden. We'll see, but we're not ready to talk about it yet because we don't know. Regarding the Forest Service, it's great to hear that we're able to replace our tower infrastructure on Red Mountain soon. And hopefully the red tape is going to get cut very quickly. That's all I have.
So
Greg's going to be listening to public radio at home.
Before you move on the Board of Health meeting on the 24th, we have no legal counsel. Should we have legal counsel there at all to advise us? Because it says
It's a special meeting, it's an HR issue.
But it says legal advice on recruitment process.
We'll chat with John.
Thank you, because we need a lawyer.
Nice to have somebody, yeah, or it'll just be me opining. How about that?
That's really scary. So could we get John?
That's really scary. Thank you. Steve has his hand up.
Oh, Steve, sorry, I was busy watching Francie.
So, this is more for Greg's information, maybe on the RAFTA board, but one thing I learned at the Holy Cross meeting was we are going to start seeing electric school buses in our local school districts. They're very excited about doing that. We also learned that each electric bus, the charging capacity of it is about the equivalent of a hotel for one bus. It takes a huge amount of capacity for, I think, like 1 megawatt of electric capability per bus. So if RAFTA has 13 of them, the school districts get so many more of that, increases our demand for electricity, and we're going to provide it by renewable electricity. It's making it harder to achieve the goal.
That's a really good point.
But still a good thing to have electric school buses so the kids aren't breathing any diesel fumes at all when they're riding the school bus.
So, any idea real quick though, if they're charging them at is it the Aspen School District? Because if they're charging them at the Aspen School District bus barn, they're on City of Aspen Electric, maybe, I don't know, but remember we heard about peak demand time, which is when you would charge the bus would be when they're not on the, so.
That's a good question.
huge expense, and plus,
My guess is they've thought about it.
yeah, and I don't think that the bus barn is retrofitted with chargers So-
Yeah, the interest,
for buses,
yeah.
really. Even though they don't have buses that are electric, they're
We do.
planning ahead.
We do have buses that are electric.
At the Aspen School District?
Oh, I
RAFTA has,
apologize.
RAFTA has
I
8
was
electric
thinking of
buses
I'm like,
already.
whoa, you know something I don't.
RAFTA has 8 electric buses. The big, we have more, you know, where everybody's asking for more. But an electric bus costs about $1 million, while a diesel bus or a gas bus are $500 to $750. So
It's
almost
cheap.
twice the price versus.
And the electric
Yeah.
buses are generally in the Upper Valley, aren't they?
They're running the long routes now,
They're
I
doing,
think.
I didn't
I
know they
think
were
they are.
running long routes out electric.
They've been road testing them now for what? It's been 2 years, and I have not heard a single complaint from the electric buses.
No,
so-
they're in my neighborhood all the time,
Yeah,
which is
it's
Are they?
great.
That's so cool.
More the better. That's about,
Those are the
I stepped on
the
you
City of
there,
Aspen
Francie.
service.
Back to you.
Oh, I just wanted to say that next week we have a special meeting of APCHA. It's an exec session about hiring a director. Yay.
I have a question about that, because I was reading something today, it was in the paper, with the discussion with Skippy and Rachel, that Skippy gets to choose the executive director.
That's what the
He gets
paper
a
said?
vote.
Yes.
But no, he gets he gets the city council's vote, right? Isn't that how I interpret it?
The executive director
No.
is actually hired by the
City manager.
advice of the APSHA board.
Okay, so
And
that was just
city
erroneous.
manager with county manager advice also, so I'll be part of that.
I remember when we went through that, how we gonna do that, this was some years ago, and I did not know that the chair of APCHA got to pick the person, so, okay.
So how does
That
that
was
work
news to
again?
me
Would you
also.
explain that one more
Yeah.
time, John? Who gets to, who
City
does it?
manager,
The city manager.
with,
And that is not Skippy.
with it isn't? With conversation with the county manager,
And advice from APSHA.
and advice from the APSHA board.
Well, yes, that's what we're doing next week. Getting ready to give
Just
advice.
keep that in mind, that Skippy does not get to appoint the APSHA director.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't want that responsibility, knowing Skippy.
All right, Francie, did you have any other,
No, we're gonna hear from the Colorado District. I had a great time with John Ely. We went out to lunch the other day and I learned so much about the Water District, the Colorado River District. And, we're gonna hear from them directly, so you don't need to hear anything from me right now.
okay, any other comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how long we stay in stage 1 fire restrictions.
I'm giving it not very long with the way the weather's forecasted or not forecasted.
But the last thing I had was that I've heard that the local forecaster, whose name I forget, I don't subscribe to him, but people who do he says starting in July, it's gonna be a wet summer.
That's really interesting that you say that, because wasn't it Joey who just said that got like 60 days?
days.
That's not what Kevin said last night when he gave the long-term weather thing to Thomasville. He said,
So we'll see.
10 days like this, 90s, just craziness, really low humidity, super high fire danger, and then possibly up to 3 weeks from now like this. But then they're seeing monsoonal possibilities after, in second week of July like they should be. And
Let's hope.
Yeah,
he
and
was,
the-
bringing
Yeah,
moisture.
the
he
Forest
said.
Service has been working very, very closely with the weather guys, like daily.
Finally, they're
not
doing
more than
something
daily.
about the weather.
Yeah, that Forest Service. All right, that's a new
We need a
department.
motion to adjourn?
Fine. No, we don't, we are done. Grassroots, thank you. Kylie, thank you. Thanks for your help. I got through it.
I'm done. Good
You
job.
did a great job.
Okay.